Hey guys, tonight we're going someplace gritty, raw, and not exactly mentioned in your average 8th grade history textbook. You're heading west. Dust on your boots, nothing in your pockets but desperation, and zero idea what's coming next. You'll learn quickly though, because this job, it's not the kind you ease into. It's survival with lipstick, corsets, and a revolving door of strangers. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and let me know in the comments, what city are you in? What time is it where you are right now? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The coach rattles and creaks beneath you, every wooden jolt echoing through your tailbone. It's been 4 days since you left St. Louis, and you're sore, hungry and dust-streaked. The woman beside you hasn't spoken since Kansas City. She just stares at her gloves like they might vanish if she looks away. You finally roll into town at mid-morning, greeted by a sun that doesn't seem to know mercy. It's the kind of town where the buildings look like they were hammered together in a hurry, and every second face on the street is either squinting suspiciously or looking for trouble. The sheriff leans outside his office chewing tobacco. A dog limps past. You breathe in the mix of horse sweat, whiskey and raw potential, and maybe rot. You step off the coach with a bag that isn't really yours and a name you're already thinking about changing. Behind you, someone yells at the driver to get the damn luggage moving. Ahead, the saloon doors sway in a lazy rhythm, like they're waiting to swallow you whole. You're here for work, of course. There are always rumours. Big money in Deadwood, new mines in Nevada, more saloons than churches in Tombstone. But by the time you arrive, it's clear the options for a single woman without connections or cash are thin. You could try laundry or housekeeping, sure, but that pays in scraps and burns you out faster than you'd think. And the men, they notice you. They notice your face, your shape, your newness. That's currency here, whether you want it to be or not. A note tucked in your coat pocket leads you to a house on the edge of town with red shutters and lace in the windows. It's not marked, but it doesn't have to be. Men come and go at all hours. You knock once, twice, and the door swings open before the third. She's tall, this madam, with hair piled high and eyes that say she's seen it all. She sizes you up like livestock but smiles kindly enough. "You looking for a room?" she asks, and her voice is warm honey, but with a sharp edge underneath. You nod. A job, maybe. She doesn't blink, just steps aside and lets you in. The parlour smells like lavender, pipe smoke and lemon polish. A piano rests in the corner, slightly out of tune. A girl in green silk lounges on a velvet chaise smoking. She doesn't even glance your way. You're not competition yet. The madam sits you down, offers tea, which you decline, your stomach's in knots. She explains the basics. You'll have a bed, meals, dresses to wear and protection, of a sort. You'll owe her rent, plus a cut of every dollar you earn. No, you won't be free to leave without settling your debt. And no, you're not the first to think that sounds like a trap. But it beats starving, she says, and you're a pretty one. You'll do well. That word, pretty, sticks in your throat. It's the first time someone said it like that. Not admiring, not affectionate, just strategic. You sign your name in her ledger, not your real one. That part of you is already slipping away. Upstairs, your room is small but clean. A basin, a cot, and a dressing mirror with a crack down one side. There's a red dress hanging on the door, tight at the waist, low at the neckline. You try it on, it itches. The boots pinch. But when you look in the mirror, you almost believe in the woman staring back. Almost. Later that evening, the house comes alive. Laughter echoes down the hallway. Perfume mingles with cigar smoke. You stay in your room, peeking through the curtain. Men enter, some sheepish, some swaggering. The girls, your future co-workers, flirt and toss their curls like it's second nature. You hear snatches of piano music, glass clinking, the low hum of seduction at work. You're not called down yet. Tonight, you're just watching. The madam gives you this one grace. Lying in your cot, you trace the cracked line in the mirror and wonder how many girls have done the same before you. How many never made it to the getting out part? You think about your mother, your baby sister, that last train station kiss from someone you already forget the name of. You wonder if they recognise you now. Probably not. In the dark, your thoughts drift to something one of the girls said on the stairs earlier. "Men think they own us," she whispered, "but we sell the illusion. They're the ones who leave broke. You're not sure yet if that's true, but it gives you something to cling to. Outside your window, a horse snorts. Boots crunch across the dirt road. A harmonica plays somewhere, slow and sweet. You don't sleep much that night. But come morning, you'll be a working girl in a frontier brothel, and there's no going back. The first knock comes around sundown. You're downstairs now, in full costume, though costume feels like the wrong word. It's not a masquerade, it's armour. Layers of silk, corsetry, rouge, and a practiced smile that doesn't quite meet your eyes. You stand with the others in the parlour, the lamplight warm and golden casting shadows across the wallpaper. Everything smells of rosewater and tobacco. Your stomach knots every time the door opens. You've been here 3 days, watching, listening, trying not to let your nerves show. But tonight, you're officially on. The Madam Miss Lottie glides past you and nods toward the door. "You'll take the next one," she says, low and firm. No discussion, no delay. Just the reality of the job wrapped in velvet. The door creaks open and a man steps inside. He's older than you expected, maybe in his 40s, with a dust-covered hat in his hands and eyes that don't quite meet yours. That's a small mercy. You step forward, offering the name you chose offhand that now clings to you like damp fabric. "I'm Ruby," you say softly, because that's who you are here. Ruby. Not Mary, not Ruth, not whoever you used to be. He nods and mutters, "All right then." You lead him upstairs. The room smells of talcum and soap. You light the oil lamp, hands steady, though your pulse thunders behind your ribs. He sets the coins on the side table without counting them aloud. $3, which you'll only see a piece of. You smile faintly and begin the small talk you've been coached on. Ask where he's from, how long he's been on the trail, offer a drink if he looks nervous. He declines. You undress slowly, keeping your eyes on his, though it makes your skin itch. He doesn't speak much. Doesn't touch much either. Just goes through the motions, quick and quiet. When it's over, he pulls on his boots in silence, leaves without a goodbye. You sit on the edge of the bed for a long time afterward, still in your stockings. The oil lamp flickers. You feel a strange hollowness, not pain exactly, more like disconnection, like you've slipped a few inches outside yourself. You're not sure what you expected, but it wasn't this. It wasn't the quiet or the blankness or how unremarkable it all feels. Downstairs, Miss Lottie asks how it went. You say fine. She doesn't press, just marks something in her little book and hands you a glass of sherry. On to the next, she says. You take a sip and feel it burn down your throat. Over the next week, it becomes routine. The knock, the name, the act. Some men are rough, but not brutal. Most are just tired. They come in smelling of cattle and dust and grief. They talk sometimes, about lost wives or wars or nothing at all. You become a mirror for their loneliness. They look at you and see what they want to see. A sweetheart, a fantasy, a forgettable indulgence. You let them. That's the job. Some clients are regulars. A wiry gambler who insists on calling you Maybelle. A gold prospector with broken teeth who pays in coin he's clearly half stolen. A preacher's assistant who insists he just wants to talk, but always ends up asking for more. You learn quickly that the dangerous ones aren't always the loudest. It's the ones with dead eyes and soft voices who make your neck tighten. One girl, June, barely 17, has a close call with a knife one night. After that, Lottie assigns one of the bouncers to stand closer to the stairs. You get used to watching the door, watching men's hands, watching their expressions when they think you're not looking. You start to read their moods like weather. You can tell when someone's about to ask for something off-book, or when someone's too drunk to finish. You learn when to be charming, when to be cold, when to fake a cough to make your escape. And then there's the other side, the recruitment. You watch as new girls come in, just like you did, wide-eyed, clutching small bags, pretending they've made a rational choice. You see it on their faces when they realise what this place really is. There's always a moment, a shift in posture, a flicker in the eyes, when it clicks. Some cry. Most don't. Miss Lottie is efficient with them. She explains the house rules again and again. No drugs without permission, no violence toward clients unless you're in danger, no stealing from the house. Keep your room clean. Keep your clients happy. Keep your mouth shut. Break the rules and she'll toss you out. Or worse, she'll call the sheriff and you'll find out how quickly he'll trade his badge for a favour. Despite all this, you feel oddly safe here. Safer than you did on the road. Safer than you did in the boarding house back in Missouri, where the landlord let himself into the girls' rooms when he pleased. At least here the terms are clear. It's not kindness, but it is consistency, and there's camaraderie. Strange as it is, the girls grow close in ways no one else could understand. In the quiet hours you share stolen fruit, patch each other's hems, whisper jokes behind your hands, you braid hair, you sing softly by the parlour piano when no one's around. It's not friendship in the usual sense, it's something deeper, a shared knowing. One night, in the bathhouse, Lucy tells you about her first client, a preacher who cried the whole time. Told me I reminded him of his dead wife, she says, lathering her arms with rose soap. I didn't know what to say, so I just cried too. You laugh, gently. Did it help? No, she says, but he tipped me extra. By the end of your second week, your name's on the rotation board like any other. Ruby, 8 p.m, 9:15, 11 p.m. You're no longer new. You've earned your place. You've survived the first knock and everything that came after. But deep inside, you already know. That was the easy part. You never knew how important a name could be until you had to invent one for yourself. It started simply, Miss Lottie asked what you wanted to be called and you said Ruby, almost without thinking. Maybe it was the colour of the dress hanging in your new room, or maybe it just sounded like someone stronger, bolder, more sure of herself. But now it's yours, Ruby. It rolls off your tongue when you say it, smooth and easy, like it belongs to someone else you're pretending to be. And maybe it does. The other girls have their own names too, some borrowed from dime novels, others from flowers or famous actresses. There's Dahlia, who claims she once sang for the governor of Texas. There's Pearl, who dresses all in white and swears she's descended from royalty, though no one quite believes her. And there's Frankie, short for Francis, who keeps a pistol under her pillow and doesn't bother hiding the scar on her chin. None of you talk much about your real names. They're tucked away with your past lives, buried under corsets and stage paint. Choosing a name isn't just for the customers, it's for you. It's armour, a layer between what's happening and who it's happening to. Every girl in the house plays a role, some with more commitment than others. You start to realise you're not just selling your body, you're selling a version of yourself that doesn't really exist. You become Ruby the coquette, Ruby the sweet thing, Ruby the exotic stranger from back east. Whatever they want you to be, as long as the money's good and the clothes help. Each girl gets a few house garments to choose from, tight-fitting bodices, skirts with hidden slits, silk gloves, feather boas, the whole stage. You find your own style over time, deep red lips, a beauty mark just above your cheekbone, loose curls pinned at the nape of your neck. When you look in the mirror now, you don't see yourself. You see Ruby, and that's a relief. It's easier to handle the work when it's happening to her, not you. There's a drawer in your vanity where you keep little keepsakes for the character you're building. A locket with no photo inside, a handkerchief with fake initials, a tiny bottle of French perfume you can't pronounce. The men love it. They ask where you're from, and you make up places with soft names and tragic backstories. I grew up near the Mississippi, you whisper, when you're half draped across a client's lap. Ran away from a bad marriage. He beat me, you know. You watch their eyes soften. They tip more when they feel like the hero. Sometimes you feel guilty about the lies, but not often. You realise fast that men don't pay for the truth. They want the fantasy, the runaway, the innocent, the temptress, the lonely girl with the heart of gold. If you're lucky, you can wrap all that into one look, one sigh, one clever story that makes them feel like you need them. That's the trick. Make them think they're saving you, even while their hands are on your waist and their coins are clinking in the bowl beside the bed. The house has a system to help you keep up the illusion. Miss Lottie supplies costume jewellery, ribbons, scented soaps, even books to leave lying around so the men think you read poetry. She knows this is theatre, and she expects you to act the part well. You sell the dream, she tells you, sipping brandy in her parlour chair. Not the deed. The deed is just the excuse they tell, themselves. But it's not all games. Some of the clients want more than a show. They ask real questions about your family, your childhood, what you'd do if you weren't here. At first, you're caught off guard. You start to answer honestly, then catch yourself. You lie instead, not because you want to deceive them, but because the truth is too dangerous to share. The truth makes you vulnerable. Ruby doesn't have a past, not one she talks about. She lives in the now, in the room, in the candlelight and laughter and champagne bubbles. One man, A travelling salesman with kind eyes asks if Ruby's your real name. You smile and say, "Does it matter?" He chuckles and shrugs. Guess not. He tips you an extra $5 and doesn't touch you at all, just sits with you and plays cards until midnight. When he leaves, you almost cry. Almost. There are moments when your identity slips. You wake up in your room and forget where you are. You hear someone call you Ruby and you flinch, not recognising it for half a second. You write a letter to your sister and almost sign it with the wrong name, but mostly the persona sticks. You become Ruby so completely that you start to forget what it was like to be anyone else. The townspeople only know you as Ruby too. When you pass them on the boardwalk, they either avoid your gaze or leer. Some women whisper behind their fans, others stare outright. You hold your head high, like Ruby would. You wear your new name like a crown, even if it's made of tin and broken glass. It protects you from the shame they want you to feel. They don't know you. Not really. They know the girl in red who laughs too loud and walks too slow. Let them believe what they want. Let them gossip. At least they remember your name. There's an odd kind of freedom in reinvention. Yes, you're trapped in this place, in this life. But inside the cage, you get to decide how you're seen. You're not Mary the waitress anymore, or Ruth the farmer's daughter. You're Ruby, the mysterious siren of the Rosewood house. You're the one they write songs about in saloons, the one they swear changed their lives for a night. Maybe it's a lie, but it's your lie. And in this world, that's worth something. One evening, as you powder your cheeks and repin your hair, you catch your reflection and ask yourself softly, who would you be if you could choose? The mirror doesn't answer. Ruby just smiles back. You learn the rules fast. Not just the ones Miss Lottie spells out in her smoky voice over brandy, but the quiet rules, the real ones, the kind that aren't written in the ledger or posted by the front door. The first rule, watch everything. Eyes on the floor, eyes on the ceiling, eyes on every man's hands and every girl's tone of voice. Even the smallest flicker means something. A clenched jaw, a stutter, the wrong kind of laugh. Danger doesn't walk in with fanfare. It creeps in like a chill through the floorboards. Miss Lottie lays down the basics when you start. Don't argue with clients, but don't let them walk over you either. If a man gets violent, scream. If you hear someone else scream, you run, no questions. If you steal, you're gone. If you run up debts you can't pay, you're worse than gone. And never, ever speak to the sheriff unless she tells you to. There's a truce between him and the house, but it's as fragile as a porcelain teacup, and twice as petty. But those are just the surface rules. The real education starts in the hallways, the back stairs, the hushed moments at the vanity when the other girls speak without looking up from their mirrors. Frankie teaches you how to hide money in the seam of your corset. Pearl tells you which customers to avoid unless you're desperate. Dahlia, older and quieter, shows you how to fake a fainting spell if a man gets too handsy. Do it with flair, she says, and you'll be too much trouble to bother again. You start to keep a mental list of the men who smile too wide, the ones who ask too many questions, the ones who smell like rage. It's never about whether a man looks dangerous. It's about whether he looks like he enjoys power. That's the poison you learn to sniff out fast. One night you hear shouting from the upstairs hallway. A client refuses to pay. He's drunk, red in the face, demanding his money's worth. You press your ear to the door, heart pounding. Lucy's voice floats through the wood, firm but not frightened. Then the heavy stomp of boots. The door slams. 5 seconds later, Gerald, the house bouncer, hauls the man down the stairs by his collar. The rest of the night goes on like nothing happened, but you notice Lucy rubbing her wrist the next morning as she pours her coffee. Nobody asks, she doesn't offer. Another unwritten rule. There's a pecking order in the house too, and you learn quickly where you fall. New girls don't get the best rooms or the best clients. Those go to the favourites, the top earners, the ones who know how to make men feel like gods. They get better dresses, fewer chores, and first pick of the whiskey bottles. You're expected to clean your own room, change your linens, and help scrub the parlour floor every Sunday morning after the worst of the hangovers. If you try to skip, Lottie finds out. She always finds out. But it's not all cold strategy. There's humour here too, sharp and dark and necessary. The girls laugh often, sometimes too loud, sometimes at nothing. They swap stories over dinner. The man who insisted on reciting poetry mid-act. The one who cried and asked if you believed in ghosts. The one who thought he'd get a discount because he claimed he was God's cousin. You learn to laugh with them, not just because it's funny, but because if you don't, the weight of it will crush you. One of the strangest rules is about silence. Not during the act. That's your performance, and you make as much noise as you need to sell the show. But afterward, when the men sleep or stumble out into the night, you're expected to shut your door and let the world forget you exist. No humming, no talking in the hallway, no piano playing after midnight. This is when the house becomes its most honest version of itself. You lie in bed, listening to the floor creak under someone's heels, the low moan of wind against the walls, the occasional sob muffled by a pillow. Everyone pretends they're alone. Of course, some rules are impossible to follow, and everyone breaks one eventually. Frankie keeps laudanum in a perfume bottle and sips from it like tea. Pearl hoards money under a loose floorboard in the attic and thinks no one knows. You see Dahlia sneak out late one night to meet a man who isn't a client. When you catch her coming back in, she just presses a finger to her lips and disappears into the dark. You break a rule yourself sooner than you expect. A client refuses to leave. He paid for an hour and he counts the minutes like a miser counts gold. He grabs your arm when you reach for the door. You try to soothe him with a smile the way the others showed you. He doesn't let go, so you scream, loud and sharp like your life depends on it. Maybe it does. Gerald's there in seconds, slamming the man into the doorframe so hard the mirror cracks. Lottie doesn't scold you, just pats your cheek and says, "Good girl." That's what the scream's for. You learn that most of these rules are about performance, maintaining the illusion, protecting the house's reputation, making sure the paying customers leave with their wallets empty and their egos full. But the deeper rules, the ones written in tension and glances, those are about survival. Survival in a world where men are allowed to take, and women have to find ways to keep something for themselves. Anything at all. Some nights, you lie awake wondering what it says about you that you've learned to live like this. That you've memorized the way to pour a drink with one hand while slipping a coin from a client's pocket with the other. That you can spot a broken nose under a powdered cheek and not ask what happened. That you've learned to flirt with someone you fear. Then you remember the alternative. Cold streets, empty bellies, doors slammed in your face, and the guilt softens. You're not proud, but you're still here, and that counts for something. Mornings come slowly in the brothel, or maybe it's just that no one wants to face them. You wake up with your face half pressed into the pillow, hair tangled, throat dry from breathing in pipe smoke all night. There's always noise downstairs. Boots on wood, a girl coughing, the faint creak of Miss Lottie's rocking chair. The house smells like yesterday's perfume and stale whiskey, the scent of roses trying to outduel the lingering funk of men. You sit up and stretch, spine popping like a deck of cards, being shuffled. Your room is still dim, even with the curtain pulled back. The windows are streaked with dust, catching slats of golden morning light that settle in stripes across your bed. You take a moment to stare at them. They're quiet stripes, safe stripes. Then, like clockwork, comes the knock. 3 soft taps. Gerald announcing breakfast. No words, just the rhythm that means, "Get downstairs, girls." It's the same every day. You pull on your robe and pad to the wash basin. The water is cold, always cold. You splash it on your face anyway, rinse out your mouth and scrub at the smudges of mascara that didn't quite disappear overnight. It doesn't matter. You'll paint over it all again by sundown. Breakfast is simple and fast. Black coffee, fried potatoes, maybe eggs if you're lucky and the cook's sober. The girls drift in slowly, wrapped in silk robes or loose corsets, barefoot and bleary-eyed. You sit beside Dahlia, who's nursing a chipped porcelain cup like it contains answers. Frankie's already halfway through a cigarette, eyes hidden behind a mess of curls. Pearl reads the back of an empty whiskey bottle like it's the Bible. No one talks much in the morning. Too early for the show. After the meal comes the cleaning. Everyone has their tasks. You sweep the second floor hallway, Dahlia beats the rugs, and Lucy polishes the banisters until they shine like molasses in the sunlight. The madam insists the house stay respectable. She likes to say, if we live like trash, they'll treat us like trash. So you scrub, you dust, you scrape wax off the floor from last night's candles, and dump stale flower water out the back door. Then there's the bathhouse. Each girl gets her slot, a short one. 10 minutes, 15 if you're fast. The water is hot on the first floor, tepid by the second, iced by the last. You rotate days to keep it fair. You shed your robe and step into the big copper tub, sighing as the heat clings to your skin. For a moment, the world fades. No men, no makeup, no staring. just steam and silence. You scrub until your skin is pink and raw, trying to erase the scent of the night before. The water turns grey. You don't look at it too long. Afterward, wrapped in a towel, you make your way to your room and pull on your corset with both hands, muttering curses under your breath as you yank the laces tight. You become someone else again. Ruby. You comb your hair, apply powder to your chest to hide a few fresh bruises, draw the black line beneath your lashes to make your eyes look bigger, more innocent, more dangerous, more anything that might earn another tip. Then comes the prep. Miss Lottie hosts a meeting before the house opens. Short, sharp, no nonsense. She assigns rooms for the night, which clients are expected any newcomers to watch for, and which of the town's more respectable citizens might be making a discreet visit. She reminds you all to smile. No frowning unless it's sexy, she says, raising her brows, and even then, I'd prefer a giggle. You laugh, because it's easier than not. The rest of the afternoon is yours, technically. Some girls nap, some write letters they never send. Pearl spends hours sewing beads into her dresses. Dahlia reads dime store romances, sighing loudly with every page. You sometimes wander out to the backyard where the fence leans and the weeds grow wild. It's quiet there. You watch the clouds drift over the rooftops and wonder if anyone you used to know is doing the same thing. Customers don't start arriving until dusk. The lighting changes around that time, gold slipping into orange, into purple, into something murky and soft. You light the parlour lamps, adjust the curtains, fluff the cushions on the couch like it matters. There's a ritual to it, one that feels almost sacred. As the sun disappears behind the hills, the girls emerge one by one in their evening dresses, faces painted and lips curled like petals in bloom. It's show time. There's an odd energy in the house before the first knock. Anticipation, fear, hunger. You all pretend it's glamour. Pretend you love the thrill of it. The rustle of taffeta, the scent of brandy and sweat, the spark of flint striking the lamp wick. But you see the stiffness in everyone's shoulders. You feel the quiet glances exchanged as someone adjusts her stockings or takes one last drink for courage. You sit in your usual chair near the fireplace, the hem of your gown tucked neatly beneath you. You smile when the men walk in, always. Even when your stomach turns, even when your feet ache from standing too long in shoes that don't fit right, even when you hear a voice that sounds like someone from your past. You never let it show. Sometimes, in those fleeting hours between afternoon and nightfall, when the candles are lit but the parlour is still empty, you imagine a different routine. You picture waking up in a quiet house with white curtains and a kitchen garden. You imagine washing your face not to hide yourself, but just because it feels good. You imagine someone saying your name, not Ruby, but your real one, and meaning it. But then the knock comes, and you rise. Because it's time. There are some clients you forget the minute they leave the room. Men who grunt and sweat and hand over their coins without looking you in the eye. They stumble out like they've just woken from a bad dream. But then there are others. The ones you remember, whether you want to or not. The ones who stick in your mind like a thorn in your palm, even days later, when you're spooning cold beans into your mouth and trying not to think about anything at all. Some are harmless, even sweet, in their strange, stumbling way. Like the young cowboy with a stammer and a clean-shaven face who paid for half an hour but just wanted to hold your hand and talk about his mother. His palms were damp the whole time, and his stories were meandering. Something about a baby colt and how he used to sneak extra bread rolls from the kitchen. You barely spoke, just nodded and let him talk. He left a silver dollar on the table and called you Mom on the way out. That one, you didn't mind. But then there are the darker ones. The ones with smiles that don't reach their eyes. The ones who say your name like it's a curse. One man, dressed like a travelling merchant, asked you if you'd ever been tied up just for fun. You hesitated, just for a second, but that was enough. He grinned like he'd won a prize. You said no, but he didn't listen. You were lucky that night. Pearl heard the shouting and burst in like a gunshot, wielding a candlestick like a club. Miss Lottie banned him from the house, but he stood outside for days, waiting, watching. You started keeping a knife under your mattress after that. Violence doesn't always come with fists. Sometimes it comes in the way they speak. The things they say when they think you're too far gone to remember, or when they think you're not even really there. One client asked you to pretend to be his dead wife. He cried afterward and gave you a flower from his lapel. You threw it away before you even left the room, but the smell lingered on your fingers. Then there was the gambler with the black gloves. He smelled like smoke and metal and had a voice as smooth as whiskey. He was charming, too charming, the kind of man who made the girls giggle just by walking in. But something about him made your spine itch. The way he watched you, how he never blinked. He never touched you, not really, but his presence filled the room like fog. He talked about death a lot, about how some women were meant for suffering. You avoided him after that. So did everyone else. And still, not every unforgettable one is cruel. Some of them are just strange. Like the prospector who carried around a small jar of gold flakes and insisted on sprinkling a few onto the sheets before he undressed. For luck, he said, solemn as a priest. Or the married banker who asked you to call him Martha and wanted to wear your dress while you read the newspaper aloud. You did it. Why not? He paid double and never laid a hand on you. These moments, weird as they are, leave an impression, not just on your mind, but your body. There's a way your shoulders stiffen when a certain kind of laugh echoes through the hallway. A twitch in your jaw when someone calls you darling, just a little too slow. You learn to read these moments, to anticipate them before they happen. Survival isn't about reacting, it's about sensing. Before the door even closes, you already know if it's going to be one of those nights. The other girls have their stories too. Over coffee or while curling their hair, you trade them like poker cards. Lucy once had a preacher who asked her to spank him with a hymnal. Dahlia had a customer who wanted her to bite his shoulder hard enough to bleed, then paid her extra to sew up the wound. Frankie doesn't talk much about hers, but you saw her come out of her room once with blood on her earlobe and a look that said, "Don't ask." Miss Lottie pretends not to hear these stories, but she does. She keeps a record of every man who's crossed a line, not just for safety, but for business. Repeat offenders get blacklisted unless they have deep enough pockets to buy forgiveness. It's a fine balance, keeping the girls safe while keeping the house running. Some nights that line gets walked dangerously thin, but you're not powerless. Not entirely. Over time, you build your own defences. The little tricks and tactics you whisper to the new girls when they arrive, eyes wide and hearts hammering. Keep your back to the wall when he unbuckles his belt. Keep the lamp low. It's harder to see bruises in dim light. If he's too drunk to walk, tell him you're sick. They never want a sick girl. And when a client starts to lean too close or breathe too hard, you become someone else. Ruby can be soft or sharp, wild or tender. She can laugh like she's in love or whisper like a ghost. She can be whatever the moment demands, because that's what survival means in a place like this. You bend before you break, but some memories stay with you no matter how well you adapt. Some faces return in your dreams, their hands still cold, their breath still sour. You wake with a jolt, the sheets tangled around your legs, the ghost of their touch still prickling your skin. You sit up, gasping, and remind yourself it's over, that they're gone, that you're still here, and that's the part no one sees. The cost that doesn't show in your makeup or your stride. It's not just the bruises or the missed meals, it's the way your mind starts cataloguing people, filtering everything through that unspoken question. Will he hurt me? Even the good ones, if such a thing exists, get sorted into categories. Safe, neutral, caution. You no longer believe in good, only in degrees of risk. But you survive, somehow, through all of it. And some nights, that's enough. You learn quickly that beauty out here isn't about vanity. It's about strategy. The way you look can shape a man's whole mood, loosen his wallet, protect you from his temper. It's a kind of armour, delicate and fake, and somehow the most powerful thing you wear. Out in the dust-blown towns of the West, where most people dress in faded denim and sweat-stained collars, you stand out like a lantern in the dark. You're painted, powdered, curled, and perfumed until you barely recognise yourself. And that's the point. The transformation starts every evening just before sunset. You sit at your small vanity with a cracked mirror, pulling pins from your hair, teasing it into soft waves or tight ringlets, depending on the crowd expected that night. Some men like their women neat and ladylike, others prefer a wild mess. You learn to read the room and adjust accordingly. A dab of rosewater behind the ears, a touch of whiskey on the breath. It all helps sell the story. Makeup isn't the glamorous kind you might imagine. No delicate compacts or gentle applicators, Instead, it's harsh powders that cling to sweat, homemade rouge from crushed berries and wax, charcoal for eyeliner you smear on with a toothpick. You keep a small vial of belladonna drops to make your pupils dilate. Gives you a soft, doe-eyed look, even when you're tired to the bone. It also gives you headaches and nausea, but beauty costs, right? Lottie reminds you of that every time you complain. Then come the clothes. You slip into your corset, groaning as Frankie yanks the strings tighter than necessary. Good posture keeps tips high, she says with a smirk, and you believe her. Once you're cinched and upright like a porcelain doll, you choose your dress for the night. Something bold, low-cut, flashy. Red is always reliable, but there's also peacock blue for the card players, lavender for the poets, and gold for when you really want to look like a walking fortune. Most dresses are hand-me-downs or patched together from the trunks in the attic. Pearl's good with a needle, and she can add a bit of lace here or a satin ribbon there to make something feel new. But even the fanciest gowns don't hide the wear. Hemlines fray, sequins fall off. Sometimes you catch yourself wondering how many other girls wore the same dress, played the same part, whispered the same lies into the same crooked bed frame. Jewellery is another part of the illusion. Most of it's fake, of course. Glass beads, tarnished metal, and the occasional stone glued into a tin setting. But you wear it like it's real. Let it catch the candlelight, make your ears sparkle, make your fingers look delicate and rich. You never wear anything you're not willing to lose. Rings come off in a scuffle. Earrings go missing with grabby hands. More than once, a girl's necklace turns up in a client's coat pocket. Accidentally taken, of course. The shoes are a nightmare. High-heeled, tight, and meant for standing around looking pretty, not for dancing or running or anything useful. They pinch your toes, blister your heels, and turn your calves into fire by midnight. But the height helps. It changes how you walk, makes your hips sway a little more, makes men look up at you like you're taller than they'll ever be. And that matters. But the scent, that's where the real magic lives. Every girl has her signature. Lucy smells like violets and peppermint. Dahlia uses a mix of clove oil and honey that makes the parlour feel like an apothecary. You go with vanilla and tobacco, a combination you stumbled on by accident but now swear by. The right smell can soften a man's memory, blur the details, make him remember only warmth and sweetness long after the night is over. Sometimes they come back just to chase it again. There's also a kind of performance to your look. You don't just sit there and wait to be noticed. You pose. You adjust your garter just enough to show the lace. You glance up from a book with practiced disinterest. You laugh too hard at a joke that isn't funny. Lean forward to pour a drink just slowly enough that your necklace sways. Every move is calculated. It's all part of the routine. It might sound like a lot of effort for a few dollars a night, but in a place like this, the right look can mean the difference between a man who treats you like a queen and one who treats you like a rag. And sometimes, it's more than money. The better you look, the more you control the situation. The more he believes he's lucky to have you, the less likely he is to get rough when things don't go his way. Of course, there are bad nights. Nights when your makeup runs from sweat or tears. Nights when you look in the mirror and see the cracks underneath the powder, the tired skin, the lines forming before they should. You're still young, technically, but this work ages you in strange, quiet ways. No one says it out loud, but you all notice the changes. Eyes that stay puffy in the morning, teeth a little more yellow from cheap wine, hands that tremble after too many nights of pretending everything's fine. There's also a growing trade in so-called beauty tonics. Travelling salesmen peddle them like miracles, creams made from whale oil, powders laced with arsenic for pale skin, drops to clear the eyes that sting like hell. Some girls try them. You tried one once that promised to make your cheeks naturally flushed. It made you break out in blotches for a week. Miss Lottie banned it after too many complaints from clients who didn't want their fantasy to come with a rash. But still, you keep up the show, because in this house, beauty is your best protection. It softens men, earns favour, hides fatigue. It makes the respectable women outside glare at you with jealousy, even if they call you a whore under their breath. It makes the madam proud. It makes you feel, if only for a moment, like you own something in a world that's constantly trying to take from you. Sometimes, after the house is quiet and the clients have gone, you sit by the mirror and slowly peel yourself apart. One pin at a time, one layer of powder, one false lash, one whalebone hook. You wipe off Ruby's face and find your own underneath, and you wonder, if someone walked in now, would they even recognise you? Maybe not, but maybe that's the whole point. You spend more time with the other girls than with anyone else, more than your clients, more than Miss Lottie, more than whatever memory remains of your family. You live together, eat together, cry in the same corners, whisper the same lies, breathe the same smoke-filled air. Over time, the brothel becomes less a house and more a ship caught in a storm, all of you clinging to different planks of splintered wood, floating through the chaos together. You're not friends in the way people usually mean it, but you're something deeper. Allies, rivals, sisters in survival. Each girl in the house is a whole story you'll never get the full version of. Frankie came from a mining camp, that much she'll admit. Says she ran away from a bad situation, and when she says those words, her voice drops an octave and her eyes go somewhere else. She's the one who'll slip a pistol under your pillow if you've got a dangerous client, no questions asked. She doesn't laugh much, but when she does, it sounds like she hasn't done it in years. Then there's Dahlia. She's older than the rest of you. Maybe 30, maybe more. Nobody's brave enough to ask. She smokes like a chimney and reads old novels in French, though she never explains where she learned the language. She has this grace about her, a kind of regal bearing that makes the men treat her like she's something expensive. She can look at a client for 5 seconds and know exactly how much he'll spend. You've watched her gently talk a man into paying triple, all while pretending she was too shy to speak. It's a gift. Lucy is the youngest, not quite 17, with big eyes and a voice like wind chimes. She tries to act older, smudging her makeup extra dark and talking about things she clearly doesn't understand. You watch over her like the others watched over you. She wants to prove herself, but there's a fragility to her that makes you nervous. You've seen her flinch at raised voices and once found her crying behind the laundry line with her hands clenched so tightly, her nails left little half-moons in her palms. Pearl is your roommate by some twist of fate, and you learn quickly that she's both a nightmare and a lifeline. She's messy, leaves corsets on the floor, steals your stockings, forgets whose lipstick is whose, but she's also fiercely loyal. When one of your clients tried to shortchange you, she cornered him at the door with a look that could curdle milk and demanded he cough up the rest. He did. She winked at you after. You're welcome, Red. At night, when the house is quiet and you're too tired to sleep, the real conversations begin. Pearl smokes out the window and tells you about her dreams. Gonna open a tea shop one day, she says. Someplace real quiet, with little tables and a cat who sits in the sun all day. No men allowed unless they're soft. You laugh, but part of you hopes she gets it. There's a kind of comfort in knowing you all carry secrets. Dahlia wears gloves not for fashion, but to hide the scars on her wrists. Frankie keeps a small Bible under her mattress, though she says she stopped believing years ago. Lucy has a coin from her father she rubs between her fingers when she's scared. You all have these totems, little pieces of your old selves you haven't quite let go of. You don't talk about them much, but you notice. You share clothes, cigarettes, combs, tears. When someone has a rough night, the others make space. You bring water, run a bath, say nothing. When someone laughs too hard, you let her. Let her pretend. In this house, you learn not to ask questions you wouldn't want asked of you. Of course, it's not all tenderness. Sometimes the air between you turns sharp. Jealousy brews like storm clouds. Frankie snaps at Lucy for stealing a favourite corset. Dahlia gets furious when Pearl books a regular she thought was hers. There are unspoken rules about territory and favouritism, about whose client is whose and who's entitled to the room with the best lamp. And when those lines are crossed, the silence at breakfast is thick enough to chew. Still, when trouble comes from outside, you close ranks fast. One night a client got rough with Lucy, left a bruise like a handprint on her collarbone. The girls didn't talk about it, they just acted. Frankie locked the doors. Dahlia accidentally spilled boiling water on the man's boots the next time he showed up. Pearl convinced Miss Lottie to raise prices for all first-time visitors. Quiet vengeance, wrapped in powder and smiles. There's no real privacy here, no locked doors, no place to weep where someone won't eventually hear you. But strangely, that makes it easier. When your heart breaks, or your body hurts, or the weight of pretending crushes your chest, there's always someone within reach. Someone who's been there, someone who won't say, "I understand," but will hand you a cigarette or braid your hair in silence until the panic passes. One night, after a long shift, you all sit on the parlour floor with a bottle of stolen gin. The piano is quiet, the lantern's low, and you're all sprawled in your underthings, laughing about something stupid. A man who asked if you could balance a teacup on your head during the act. Dahlia plays a soft tune on a harmonica she keeps in her garter. Lucy dances slowly, barefoot on the rug. Pearl lies with her head in Frankie's lap, humming. It feels warm. Not safe, but warm. Like a campfire on a cold night. That's what this is, really. A campfire. A circle of women surrounded by the wolves of the world, trying to keep each other warm until morning. You may never truly know one another, may never see each other outside these walls in any other life. But here, right now, you're all that stands between survival and ruin. And sometimes, when it's quiet, and you hear one of them sigh in her sleep, you whisper a little thank you to the night. Because without them, this place would break you in half. You don't think much about your health until your body forces the issue. At first, it's little things. A sore throat that won't go away, a cough that lingers, a strange heat behind your eyes. You chalk it up to dust, whiskey, the chill that seeps in through the cracks in the walls. But then the other girls start getting sick, one by one, and it doesn't feel so harmless anymore. You begin to understand that out here, illness isn't an inconvenience, it's a threat. An invisible hand that could pull you under at any moment. The worst, of course, are the diseases that come with the job. No one talks about them openly, but they hover like ghosts in every bedroom. They've got names like the French pox and the morning drips, softened by euphemism, but the reality is ugly and relentless. The symptoms start slow, burning when you relieve yourself, aches that don't go away, sores that refuse to heal. Then come the fevers, the rashes, the hallucinations, and worst of all, the shame. Because even though the clients are the source, it's the women who are blamed. Always. There's a drawer in Miss Lottie's office filled with medicine. You recognise some of it. Mercury pills that make your gums bleed, bitter tinctures that burn going down. She doles them out with a cold sort of efficiency. Take this, she says. Stay in bed. Don't touch anyone. You do as you're told, even when the pills make your hands shake and your stomach turn. Some girls swear by whiskey and garlic, others whisper about secret cures brought in by travelling apothecaries, powders from China, oils from the islands, strange-smelling brews that taste like regret. You try them all, anything to stay on your feet. There's no doctor in town who comes to the brothel unless he's been paid in advance and promised discretion. You had to see him once, the town physician with hands too soft and eyes too curious. He called you young lady, like it was an insult, and examined you like he was bored. He prescribed laudanum and advised moral restraint. Then he told you not to come back unless you had cash. You haven't returned since. The other option is the midwife on the edge of town, a woman named Sister May who's not really a nun but dresses like one. She treats the girls without judgment, boils herbs in old pots, bandages wounds with strips of flannel, keeps quiet when someone shows up asking about delicate matters. You like her. Her hands are rough but kind. She doesn't ask for money, just favours. An extra loaf of bread, a few candles, word-of-mouth protection. You suspect she's done things she can't speak of, but you trust her more than any doctor with a diploma on the wall. Frankie got sick last winter. Real sick. She couldn't get out of bed for days, shivering and sweating, her breath rattling like dry leaves. The rest of you took turns sitting by her side, dabbing her forehead, spooning broth into her mouth. Dahlia read to her from a worn novel. Pearl sang lullabies when she thought no one else was listening. Frankie survived, barely, but she hasn't been the same since. Her hands tremble when she lights her cigarettes now. She's quieter, slower, and she never talks about those days in bed, the way her body betrayed her. You start to keep your own health rituals, little. Superstitions you hope will help. A spoonful of honey every morning, lavender oil on your pillow, a red ribbon tied around your wrist on the new moon, gifted by Lucy, who swears it wards off illness. It probably doesn't work, but it makes you feel better, and sometimes that's enough. The truth is, you live in a world where your body is never fully yours. It belongs to the house, to the clients, to the coin. You dress it up and offer it like a service, but deep down, it's still the vessel carrying your quiet fear. Every twinge, every unexpected pain makes your breath catch. You don't have the luxury of ignoring symptoms. You can't afford rest, not for long. If you're not working, you're not earning. And if you're not earning, you're not staying. There are whispers about girls in other towns, brothels where syphilis runs rampant, places where the madam burns the sheets after every visit, where whole rooms are abandoned because of the rot. One story haunts you. A girl named Nell who went blind before anyone realised what was wrong. She'd been swallowing mercury powder every day for months, chasing a cure that turned on her. They say she wandered out into the desert and never came back. You hope that's not true. You hope she made it somewhere quieter, somewhere where no one calls her a whore or watches her stumble. When a girl in the house disappears for a few days, you all pretend not to notice. Sometimes it's just a rest, a cold, a need to be still. Sometimes it's worse. Miss Lottie never explains. She just tells you, she'll be back soon, or she's gone on to a better opportunity. You nod. You keep working. You add her name to the list in your head. The girls who vanished without a word, the ones who didn't bounce back, and the men, they rarely notice. They still come. Still ask for their favourite girl, and when she's not there, they move on to the next. They don't ask why Lucy looks pale or why you wince when you sit down too fast. They don't see the cough behind your smile, the way your hands shake when pouring a drink. If you're still standing, still painted, still willing, that's all that matters. You tell yourself you're strong, that you're still here, that you're not one of the stories, but in the quiet, in the stillness between the knocks at the door, you wonder how much longer your body will hold. Because out here, in this world of lace and sweat and whispered prayers, survival is a matter of inches. And health? Health is just luck. You learn quickly that the law in a place like this isn't a set of rules, it's a sliding scale. There's what's written in books and posted on dusty courthouse walls, and then there's what actually happens. The line between lawman and outlaw is thin, frayed, and often just plain invisible. Most days, you're not sure who to be more afraid of. The men with badges or the ones with scars and revolvers tucked into their belts. Either. One can ruin you, and both are regular guests at the house. The sheriff in your town is a tall, sunburned man named Holt, who wears his hat like it's nailed to his head. His boots are polished, his voice always slow and calm, but there's something slippery in his eyes, like he's always measuring people, weighing them against some personal scale only he understands. He stops by the brothel at least twice a week. Never pays, never books a girl, just sits in the parlour, drinks a little whiskey, asks a few questions he already knows the answers to. Sometimes he comes alone, sometimes with a deputy in tow, always armed, always watching. Miss Lottie handles him with the precision of a card shark. She flatters him just enough, smiles at the right moments, never lets him see her sweat. The sheriff knows he's useful to the house, and that the house is useful to him. If there's trouble with a client, especially one who refuses to leave or gets rough, he'll show up eventually, but not without collecting his due. Some weeks it's money, other weeks information, and sometimes it's worse. He once asked Dahlia to escort a visiting judge from Denver, said it would smooth things over after a brawl at the saloon the night before. She didn't want to, but Miss Lottie insisted, said it was good business. Dahlia went, came back the next morning without saying a word. Didn't leave her room for 3 days, you don't ask. That's another rule, you never ask. The sheriff isn't the only lawman who floats in and out. There are marshals on the trail of fugitives, bounty hunters looking to blow off steam, Pinkertons sniffing around rail towns for union agitators. They all wear the same smug, road-weary expression, like the whole world owes them something. You serve them drinks, bat your lashes, pretend to laugh at their dry little jokes. Most are harmless, just looking to forget the weight of their tin stars for a night. But a few see the house as their playground, off-duty, unchecked, and full of women too broke to say no. On the flip side, you've met outlaws with better manners than the sheriff. Gunslingers who tip generously, take their time and leave quietly. One even brought Lucy a ribbon for her hair. Said it reminded him of a girl he knew in El Paso. He was gone the next morning, his wanted poster still nailed to the general store wall, right next to a sign advertising canned peaches and dried beans. Another came in after a job, still smelling like smoke and gunpowder. Sat down in the parlour, handed Frankie a wad of cash, and asked for her kindest touch. She said he didn't flinch once, not even when she pressed against the bruises blooming along his ribs. There's a strange comfort in those men. You know exactly what they are. They don't pretend to be good. They don't wear stars or carry papers that say appointed. They're honest in a way the lawmen rarely are. It's the hypocrisy that makes your skin, crawl the way the sheriff preaches order by day and slips into the house at night asking for just a little more sugar, just a taste. You keep a ledger of sorts in your head. Who's dangerous? Who's just lonely? Who might protect you if things ever really went bad? Frankie keeps a sharper one, a physical list, carved into the underside of a drawer in her vanity. Just names and marks. 1 scratch means trouble. 2 means carry a weapon. 3 means never be alone with them. You added someone once. A deputy named Kane who cornered you in the hallway and pressed his badge into your neck when you told him no. The next day, he showed up with flowers like that would fix anything. The hypocrisy bleeds beyond the walls. The respectable men in town, the banker, the blacksmith, even the preacher, know what goes on in the house. They just pretend not to, until they show up on your arm after midnight, mumbling prayers or apologies, asking you to say their name like it means something. Then, the next morning, they walk past you in the street like you're invisible. Sometimes they nod, sometimes they don't. One of the strangest nights you remember, a known outlaw and a deputy showed up at the same time, both armed, both angry. You froze, thinking it would end in bullets. But instead, they nodded to each other, laughed, and went upstairs with 2 girls like it was a poker game they'd both agreed to play. That's the West for you. Enemies by daylight, drinking partners by candlelight. You learn to navigate this twisted network of power and pretense. You smile when you need to, go silent when it's safest, speak when you know it'll be heard. You learn to play them off each other when necessary, drop a comment to the sheriff about the outlaw's generosity, mention the deputy's name when a client gets too rough. You don't do it often, just enough to keep the scales balanced in your favour, or close enough. It's exhausting. Not just the work, but the politics, the constant shifting of masks and tones, the fear that one wrong word will bring the sheriff down hard or have the wrong man trailing you after dark. You keep your head down. You remember what Miss Lottie said on your second day. We don't break the law here, we sell to it. And she's right. You've seen more lawmen pass through this parlour than gamblers or cowboys or drifters combined. They sit on your couches, sip your liquor, and carry your perfume back to their wives. They make the rules, but only when it suits them. So you keep smiling, keep pouring the drinks, keep your secrets and your knife within arm's reach. Because the West isn't about justice. It's about surviving the people who pretend they deliver it. You've barely had your coffee when the preacher shows up. It's a Tuesday morning, sun low and dusty, the scent of coal smoke drifting down from the freight yard. You're in your dressing robe, barefoot on the back steps, enjoying 5 minutes of quiet before the work starts. And then there he is, Reverend Thorne, striding across the yard like Moses come to part the brothel, hat in one hand, Bible in the other. He doesn't knock, just pushes open the kitchen door and nods at Miss Lottie like she's the barkeep of a tavern he doesn't quite approve of but visits anyway. The girls groan as soon as they see him, not because they're afraid, he's not that kind of man, but because his presence means judgment, and judgment before breakfast is too much for anyone to stomach. He's tall, sharp-jawed, with the voice of a man used to commanding a room. In another life, he might have been a school teacher, or a judge. Instead, he's the town's holy voice, sent to tend the moral fence, as he likes to say. And that fence? It runs right through your parlour. He calls it his duty to visit, says it's not for condemnation, but guidance. But he never brings bread, or money, or the practical things girls like you actually need. No, he brings pamphlets, little folded sheets with trembling illustrations of ruined women, and phrases like, the road back to virtue, and sin wears silk. Sometimes he reads aloud, quoting scripture while Dahlia smokes and Pearl files her nails, both pretending not to listen but catching every word. He always looks directly at you when he says, it's not too late to choose a different path. You smile back and say, this one pays better. It rattles him, every time. He hides it with a grimace, maybe a well-practiced sigh, but the girls live for it. Frankie once told him her favourite passage from the Bible was the one where Jesus refused to throw the first stone, then she winked. He hasn't made eye contact with her since, but still he comes, week after week, lectures in the morning, visits at dusk. He says he's here to save souls, but you can't help noticing how his gaze lingers on Pearl's legs, how his hands tremble just a little when Lucy walks past in her corset. He talks about sin like it's something you carry, like soot on your skin, but his voice gets lower every time he asks, "Have you girls been praying?" Once, when the house was quiet, you found him alone in the parlour, sitting on the velvet settee, staring at the fireplace like he'd seen a ghost. He didn't notice you for a moment, and when he did, he smiled, tired, real. Not the smile he gives from the pulpit, a human one. "Do you ever feel lost?" he asked. Just that. You nodded. "All the time," you said. He stood and left without another word. A week later, he came back with fire again, talking about damnation, righteousness, paths of light, as if that vulnerable moment had never happened. The town sees him as their moral compass, but you've seen more in his silences than they ever will in his sermons, and you're not alone. Miss Lottie has a rule. He can preach, but he pays like anyone else if he asks for something more, and he has. Twice. That you know of. Once with Dahlia, once with a girl named Elise who left town not long after. He always comes with apologies in his eyes, but the same request on his tongue. Each time he says it's the last. It never is. You've debated with the other girls what drives him. Guilt, lust, a belief he can save you all with the right verse. Maybe it's all of it. Tangled up in a man who isn't sure if he hates you or wants to be you. Free in ways he's never dared. He once gave Lucy a necklace with a cross on it, said it would protect her. She sold it 2 hours later for a bottle of port and a warm meal. He never asked about it. What's strange is that, in some twisted way, his visits give the house rhythm, a breath between the madness, a shared target for jokes and whispered jabs. On sermon days you all sit up a little straighter, rehearse your sass. It's not respect, but it's something like ritual. There's one Sunday you won't forget. He delivered a fiery sermon at the church house, railing against vice and temptation. The next night he knocked on the brothel door just after midnight. You opened it. He looked tired, soaked in rain, shaking like a man on the edge. "Do you believe in redemption?" he asked, barely above a whisper. You looked at him, saw the storm behind his eyes and said, "I believe in warm tea and quiet rooms." He didn't stay long, didn't ask for anything, just sat by the fire for a while watching the flames and then left. After that he kept his distance, still preached, still handed out pamphlets, but he never stayed long. You suspect he's wrestling with something bigger than you can fix. Maybe that's why he's drawn to you all, because you've already lost that fight and he still thinks he might win his. There are days when you almost pity him, other days when you're too tired to care. He'll keep coming. Preachers always do. Not because they think they'll change you, but because somewhere deep down they wish they could be like you. Free from pretense, honest about your sins, no stage, no mask. Just a woman surviving the world with whatever's left in her hands. You're not waiting for salvation. You know better than that. But when Reverend Thorne says, "I pray for you every night," you nod and say, "Thanks." Because who knows? Maybe someone should. There's a strict order to the house, whether anyone admits it or not. It may look like chaos from the outside, all satin and smoke and laughter floating up through the parlour rafters, but behind it, a hierarchy hums beneath the surface like a well-wound watch. Everyone knows their place. Everyone knows what's owed, what's earned, and what's off limits. And if you forget for even a second, someone, usually Miss Lottie, will remind you. At the top is the madam, of course. Lottie runs the house like a general wrapped in perfume and pearls. She's not cruel, not really, but there's steel behind her smile and a ledger thicker than the town Bible. She knows who's earning what, who's breaking rules, who's getting too friendly with clients. She hears everything, even when she pretends she doesn't. She'll hand you a silk dress one day and dock your pay the next. She plays favourites too, and you don't blame her. It keeps the girls on their toes, keeps them hungry. Her favourite right now is Dahlia, who earns more in one night than most girls make in a week. Dahlia gets the best room. Big windows, red velvet curtains, a real feather bed. She gets first pick of clients, the best dresses, the wine with the cork instead of the screw cap. She also does the least cleaning, the least waiting, and can roll her eyes at Lottie without consequences. You don't begrudge her that. She's earned it in her way. Knows how to work a room like it owes her something. Below Dahlia is a loose second tier. Girls like Frankie and Pearl, long-timers who've built reputations with the regulars. They're not as glamorous, but they're trusted. They get steady work, decent tips, and a little more freedom. Frankie once punched a man for grabbing Lucy's thigh in the hallway, and only got a warning for it. Pearl knows where Lottie keeps the emergency whiskey and isn't afraid to sneak a sip when the mood turns sour. They don't complain much. They've made peace with the machine. Then there are the rest of you. Newer girls, rotating girls, the ones still finding footing. You work harder, longer, and usually for less. You clean more, wait more, smile more even when your face aches from the effort. You're given the leftover clients, the last bath slot, the dresses with buttons missing or seams torn. You don't get privacy, but you get a place, and in a world where most doors close before you can knock, that counts for something. At the bottom are the girls who never quite settle. They come and go like weather, storm in with hope in their eyes, leave with bruises or debts or both. Some don't even last a week. One girl, Eliza, arrived with a Bible and a suitcase full of silk gloves. She was gone 2 days later, didn't say goodbye. Another Cass tried to fight the order, refused to pay her cut, refused to follow the rotation. Lottie let her stay just long enough for everyone to learn from her example. One morning, Cass was simply gone, her room stripped bare. No one asked questions. Then there's the help, the maids, the cook, the laundry girl. They don't work in your rooms, but they clean your sheets and cook your meals. They live in a different part of the house, eat at different times, keep their heads down. Most don't speak much to the working girls. Not out of spite, just self-preservation. You're on different sides of the same coin. Sometimes you wonder what they think when they wash the lipstick out of your linens or dump out your half-finished gin. If they judge you, if they envy you, if they pity you. And there's Gerald, the bouncer. Tall, quiet, and dangerous in that slow-moving way that makes even the drunkest client think twice. He doesn't talk unless he has to, but he watches everything. When a man raises his voice or touches a girl too rough, Gerald's there before you can scream. You've seen him carry full-grown men out the front door like laundry sacks, their boots dragging across the floor. The girls all trust him, though no one really knows him. He's never been in a girl's room, never asked, never stared. That kind of respect buys him silence and coffee, no questions asked. Miss Lottie keeps the system intact by mixing kindness with control. She gives gifts when the house is flush, a new bottle of perfume, a bolt of velvet for making dresses, a half day off if you've had a rough week. But she also keeps the books, and the books don't lie. Every ribbon, every broken comb, every night off for illness goes into your account. You're always in debt. You owe for room, for food, for clothes, for the doctor if he's called, for the drink you didn't ask for but drank anyway because it was already poured, and if you try to leave before the numbers are settled, she makes sure no other house will take you. It's not slavery, not quite. You can walk away, but you won't get far. The sheriff knows Lottie, so does the banker. If she wants you tracked, she knows who to call. She rarely does. Most girls don't need chasing. They stay because they've got nowhere else to go or because they think they're almost free. Just one more good week from breaking even. And then something happens. A broken heel, a bad client, a slow month. And suddenly the ledge is thick again. But hierarchy isn't just about status. It's also about survival. Who you align yourself with. Who you trust to cover for you when you're too sick to work. Who'll share a dress or a secret or a little extra rouge. It's like walking a tightrope above a pit full of wolves. You can't afford to stand too close to anyone, but you can't survive alone either. The smart girls learn how to balance it, how to keep loyalty without weakness, how to share without giving too much away. Sometimes you wonder what it would look like if the whole system collapsed, if every girl refused to pay her cut, if you all walked out together into the street and left Lottie with nothing but empty rooms and cold tea. You imagine it like a movie, dramatic music, overturned tables, high-heeled footsteps echoing down the boardwalk. But it never happens, because deep down, you know the system isn't just hers, it's yours too. And once you learn how to work it, sometimes, it almost feels like power. Almost. Money moves through the house like blood, constant, necessary, and always being measured. You learn to count in coin, to track every tip, every docked fee, every bottle of perfume that shows up on your bill without warning. You learn quickly that what a man hands you is never what you get to. Keep. Half of it, sometimes more, goes to Miss Lottie. Then there's the cost of rent, food, candles, makeup, linens, even the pins you use to twist your hair. You're not just working to earn, you're working to owe less. Each night you start with a bowl on your vanity, polished tin or chipped porcelain, depending on what's free. Every coin a client gives you goes in the bowl, and by the end of the night it's supposed to glimmer with silver and brass. You try not to count until morning, Too easy to get disappointed if it's a slow night, too dangerous to get giddy if it's a good one. But still, you glance at it before sleep. Just once. Just enough to guess how close you are to that fantasy of yours. Freedom, a ticket out, a new dress not chosen from a pile of cast-offs. The older girls teach you how to stretch what you make. Dahlia wraps her bills in oilcloth and sews them into the hem of her petticoat. Frankie hides coins in the hollow of her vanity leg, a little knot in the wood pried loose with a butter knife. Pearl keeps a tin box under the floorboards, though every time she adds to it she mutters, "Don't you dare tell anyone or I'll feed you your own corset." You laugh, but you keep the secret. Tips are where the real money hides, and getting them is an art form. You compliment a man's boots, you remember his dog's name, you touch his arm when you laugh. The trick isn't just to be beautiful, it's to make him feel like he is. Men tip best when they think they're special, when they believe they're not just one of 100, so you lean in. You ask questions. You smile like it's just for him. And when he's fumbling with his coat on the way out, you remind him gently, "A little something for Ruby?" Most don't even hesitate. There are, of course, the stingy ones, the men who act like they're doing you a favour just by breathing the same air. They tip in buttons, foreign coins, and once a tooth. Lottie keeps a drawer full of these oddities, calls it her museum of cheap men. There's a crumpled IOU in there signed by a man who said he'd come back with gold. He didn't. There's also a silver ring with a cracked opal, a single playing card, and a tiny glass eye. You've seen it. It stares at you like it knows the truth. Then there are the gamblers. Wild, generous, and usually broke by morning. They come in flush with winnings and throw their money like it burns. One man gave Lucy a whole pouch of silver dust once, drunk off his own luck. She spent it all on a coat she wore exactly twice before someone borrowed it. You learn to take what they give fast, don't ask questions, don't wait. Gamblers love you when they're up and vanish when they're down. Saving money is a whole different gamble. Most of the time it feels like trying to carry water in your hands. No matter how careful you are, it slips through. A broken shoe, a sick week, a client who damages the room and leaves. You paying for repairs? You think you've got a little nest egg, then the stove breaks or the doctor charges double for his silence. Even when you manage to save, you don't talk about it. Money makes people desperate, and desperation makes people cruel. You've seen what happens when one girl finds out another's holding a stash. Things go missing, words get whispered, trust breaks fast. Some girls try to send money home, little folded bills wrapped in cloth and handed off to the postmaster with trembling hands. Pearl does it once a month, says her baby brother needs school books, though she's never said where he lives. Frankie used to send money too, until a letter came back unopened. After that she stopped writing altogether. You've thought about it, of course. Wondered what your sister would think, receiving a few crumpled dollars wrapped in the smell of your perfume. But the shame outweighs the urge. You keep your money close. There's a running joke among the girls that the richest person in town isn't the banker or the saloon owner. It's Lottie. And they're not wrong. She keeps the books with brutal accuracy. Each week she sits in her office with her spectacles perched on her nose, tallying up what's owed and what's earned. She never raises her voice, never slams a door, but when she hands you your envelope you can feel the weight of her judgment inside it. Sometimes there's more than you expected. Sometimes less. You ask questions at your own peril. Occasionally someone tries to cheat the system. Pad the tips, skip a debt, pocket a client's watch, and pretend he misplaced it. It never ends well. Lottie finds out. Always. The girl either disappears quietly or gets a public dressing down so sharp it makes the wallpaper peel. Once, a new girl tried to run off with a week's earnings, made it as far as the freight yard before Gerald found her sitting on a crate crying into her skirt. She was gone by morning. Lottie never mentioned her name again. Still, you dream of that moment, walking away with just enough to start fresh. A boarding house in San Francisco, a dress shop in Kansas City, a cabin with no neighbours, and a porch that catches the evening sun. You imagine it often, hand resting on your hidden stash, calculating how many more nights it'll take to buy your freedom. And then someone knocks on your door and the bowl starts filling again. The cycle continues. Because money is your lifeline here, and every dollar earned is another heartbeat in a life that doesn't belong to you. Yet. The respectable women of the town don't speak to you. Not unless it's behind a lace fan, through a church window, or from across the road when their husbands aren't looking. They drift by in their high collars and polished gloves, eyes forward, jaws clenched, pretending you're just another shadow on the boardwalk. But you know they see you. You feel their stares like needles through your dress seams. They know what you are. They just don't want to admit how curious that makes them. They look at you like you're a smudge on their nice clean picture, like you don't belong. And maybe you don't. Not in their world of garden teas and prayer circles and Sunday lace, but they don't belong in yours either. So you nod when they glance your way, tip your parasol politely, and move on with a little more sway in your hips than necessary. Let them watch. At first, you thought it was hatred. The cold looks, the whispers behind gloves, the way they steer their children to the other side of the street when you pass. But over time, you realise it's something more complicated. Some of them do hate you, sure. Hate what you represent, hate that their husbands visit the brothel and come home smelling like your perfume. But others look at you with something that's almost envy. Not because your life is easy, but because you are, in a way, free. They wear virtue like a corset, tight, rigid, painful. They live under the watchful eyes of husbands, fathers, pastors and neighbours. They smile when they're supposed to, nod when appropriate, speak only when spoken to. You, on the other hand, speak however you want. You wear red, you walk alone, you laugh too loud. And though it's not freedom in the full sense, though you're still trapped in other ways, it's more than they've ever been allowed, and that burns them. Some try to pretend they're above it all, but you've seen the cracks in the facade. A well-to-do banker's wife once knocked on the back door of the brothel, cloak drawn, breath sharp and nervous. She didn't want a man, she wanted help. Said her husband hadn't touched her in 6 months, that she wanted to know what he found so appealing. Dahlia gave her a small bottle of scented oil and a few whispered tips. Told her to relax her shoulders and try red lipstick. The woman never said thank you, but she left a pair of leather gloves behind, expensive ones, a peace offering maybe, or a bribe to keep her secret. Others follow you in subtler ways. The dress you wore 1 week will show up 2 weeks later in the town's general store window, watered down version, longer hemline, muted colours. The preacher's wife once wore her hair in the exact style you'd started using. Coincidence? Maybe, but probably not. They steal pieces of you in silence, then pretend not to see you the next day, like magpies with pearls. Once, at the dry goods store, you stood behind a woman buying fabric. She glanced at you over her shoulder and clutched the bolts tighter. You smiled. She didn't. But you noticed the fabric in her hands was the same shade as your evening dress. The one you wore 2 nights earlier when you sat in the parlour window with a book and a glass of sherry, pretending to be too busy to notice the men on the street. Apparently someone did. You don't blame them. Not really. Their world is small, contained, controlled. Yours is too in its own brutal way. But there's something about being able to move through town without asking permission, without hiding behind your husband's coat, that unsettles them. You can feel it. Some try to save you, bless them. They leave pamphlets at the door, tucked into the cracks like weeds. Purity through prayer, a home for wayward women, sisters of grace and temperance. You read them over breakfast, full of testimonials from reformed women who now sew lace for churches and say things like, "I used to sell sin, but now I sell salvation." Lottie saves the funniest ones and posts them in the pantry. A whole wall of holy concern right next to the whiskey shelf. Every now and then, one of the women gets bold enough to speak to you in public. Not kindly, of course. It's always with that sharp-edged sweetness, like sugar hiding poison. "Isn't it just a shame what some girls will do?" one of them said loudly at the post office, eyes locked on you. "Walking around like they matter," you smiled and told her. "At least I earn my own spending money." The man behind the counter coughed to hide his laugh. She left with her cheeks blotched and her jaw tight. But they're not all cruel. Some of them are just lost. You see it in their eyes, when they glance down at your boots, or linger on your earrings, or ask you quietly where you bought your perfume. You lie, say it came from San Francisco, say it's expensive and rare. Better than telling them it was a gift from a dying client who never came back. The children don't know any better. They wave at you from windows, stare when you pass. One little girl once asked you if you were a princess. You told her, "Only at night." Her mother dragged her away like she'd just touched fire. And that's what you are to them, fire. Fascinating, dangerous, untouchable. They want to be close enough to feel the heat, but not so close they catch. You carry that with you, every day like a lantern in your chest. a flickering reminder that your life is too much for their quiet world to contain. But you've stopped letting it hurt, mostly, because while they bake pies and mend shirts and recite psalms about obedience, you survive, and while they look through you like glass, their husbands look at you like they've never seen anything else. Every night is a performance, and you, the girl in lace powder and perfume, are the star of a stage no one admits is real. You don't sell sex, not exactly. You sell something murkier, harder to define. A mood, a dream, a version of yourself sharpened and softened in just the right places to make a man forget everything that came before he walked through the door. You don't call it acting, but that's what it is. Brothel as theatre, and you're both playwright and lead. It starts when you descend the staircase just after sunset, one gloved hand trailing the banister like a heroine in some cheap dime novel. The parlour is your stage. You know how the light hits your face best from the second velvet armchair, how your laughter sounds better when it's bouncing off the polished glass of the whiskey cabinet. You don't sit, you pose, elbow resting, head tilted, corset pulled tight so your waist looks like it could snap under a strong breeze. You've practiced in front of the mirror until you can arch a brow without thinking, until you can smile without showing your real teeth. The men don't want the truth, they want a story, so you give them one. You say you were once a singer in St. Louis but the theatre burned down, or that you married young and your husband died of fever in the Arizona heat. Sometimes you're a preacher's daughter gone bad, sometimes you're a runaway heiress slumming it for fun. It doesn't matter if they believe it. What matters is that they want to. The right story makes them gentler, or at least less cruel. A good lie can earn you an extra $1. A great lie might keep you from a bruise. You tailor your act for each client. The lonely ones want warmth. They want you to listen, to touch their arm like you care, to sigh like you're caught in a romance. The rowdy ones want sass and a little fight, so you give them clever quips and teasing glances. The quiet ones want mystery, so you lower your voice, speak in half sentences, and leave the rest to their imagination. You're not just selling your body, you're selling a fantasy, a version of the love that's soft around the edges and easy to buy. Some nights, it feels like art. A perfectly timed sigh. A moan just delicate enough to seem real. The way your fingers move over a man's collar, pretending you're fascinated by the stitching. You don't love them. You barely like most of them. But for a few moments, they get to feel like they matter. Like they're the only thing that matters to you. And when they leave, you wipe off the makeup and do it all over again. There's a rhythm to it now. The way you light the candles just so. The way you fluff the pillows, set out the whiskey glass at the right angle, keep the room smelling faintly of violets. You've learned to modulate your voice. Higher when you want to sound sweet, slower when you want to sound sultry. You've memorized the creaks in the floorboards so you know when someone's coming. You keep a mirror angled just enough to watch a man's face without looking at him directly. Pearl calls it the show. You gotta give 'em the show, sweetheart, she says, applying her lipstick in the reflection of the parlour window. They're paying for the dream, not the dirt under our nails. She's not wrong. Most of the men who walk through that door don't want reality. They get enough of that in the mines, the saloons, the dry wind that never stops howling through their lives. They want something soft, something that smells good and says their name in a way their wives never did. Of course, not every night is smooth. Sometimes the show cracks. A man pushes too far. A lie slips out of your mouth too fast and he catches it. Sometimes you forget what version of yourself you are supposed to be. You call him the wrong name. He notices your wince when he touches your side. He smells fear. Those are the dangerous moments, the seconds between performance and panic. You've learned to recover quickly. A laugh, a touch, a distraction. But it doesn't always work. One night you were playing the innocent. A soft voice, blushing cheeks. A little girl lost in a world too big. The man liked it too much. Liked it in a way that made your stomach turn. You changed tactics halfway through, tried to shift into something bolder. He didn't like that. Didn't want Ruby. He wanted a child who didn't fight back. You got through it. Barely. When he left, you vomited behind the garden shed. Frankie found you and didn't say a word. Just handed you a cloth and sat beside you until your hands stopped shaking. You can't be perfect every night. No one can. But you try. Because the better the show, the safer you are. The more convincing your performance, the fewer surprises. It's not about seduction. It's about control. There are small victories, though. Nights when the act is so seamless, you almost believe it yourself. A man tells you you're the most beautiful girl he's ever seen, and for a flicker of a second, you let yourself feel it. You twirl before the mirror and smile, not the stage smile, but the real one. You whisper your lines so softly you start to wonder if the girl you're pretending to be might be the real you after all, the one who escaped, who started over, who's winning at her own rigged game. Then the door opens, and your smile resets, and the act begins again. Because this is the theatre of survival, and the curtain never closes. You never mean to fall for anyone. In a place like this, love is a danger, a luxury, a slow-acting poison you're taught to spit out before it sticks. Miss Lottie warns you early on. They don't love girls like us. And if they say they do, they're either lying, drunk, or worse, serious. You laugh at first, like it's just a joke, a lesson handed down through too many nights and not enough daylight. But you learn soon enough. Falling in love here isn't romantic. It's risky. It can cost you everything. Still, it happens, not all at once. It sneaks up on you, careful and quiet. It starts with a smile that lingers. A client who doesn't push, doesn't grab, doesn't treat you like something to be used and forgotten. He remembers your name, your real one, not Ruby. He asks if you've eaten. Brings you coffee in the morning, still warm, with just the right amount of sugar. He listens, and not the way clients pretend to listen, nodding while their hands wander. He listens like he actually hears you. That's how it begins. His name is Tom. Or maybe it isn't. You never ask for proof. He's a rancher, or says he is. Spends weeks out in the hills, then comes into town with sunburned skin and a quiet ache in his eyes. At first, he's just another client. Polite, soft-spoken, pays in gold, tips well. But he doesn't ask for much. Sometimes he just sits with you, holding your hand, telling stories about coyotes and rattlesnakes and prairie grass that grows so high it hides whole herds. You find yourself laughing. Not the performative kind. Real laughter, the kind that bubbles up before you can stop it. The first time he kisses you, it's different. Gentle, slow, not greedy. He asks, "Is this all right?" and waits for your answer like it matters. You say yes, but your voice cracks. You're not used to being asked. You're used to pretending it's fine even when it isn't. He notices, doesn't push. Just sits beside you for the rest of the hour, hand resting on yours like it's the only thing he came for. The girls notice, of course. They always do. Pearl raises an eyebrow. "Careful," she says. "They all seem different at first, until they start talking about taking you away, then leave you holding your own baggage." Frankie's harsher. "Men who want to save you want to own you. Don't mistake kindness for safety." You nod, pretend you're listening. But you keep waiting for the nights Tom returns. He starts coming more regularly, brings gifts. Nothing showy, just little things. A hand-carved comb, a book of poems, a silver coin engraved with a steer's head. One night he shows up with a pie, said he tried to bake it himself and nearly set the kitchen on fire. It's terrible, burnt on the edges, raw in the centre, but you eat every bite. Something about the effort makes your chest tighten. You haven't had someone make something for you in years. He tells you about his land, about a little cabin tucked near a stream, about a dog named Buster who howls every time he plays his harmonica. You picture it easily, too easily. You find yourself daydreaming while scrubbing your vanity mirror, staring at the glass and seeing not Ruby, but you, whoever you were before, with your sleeves rolled up, washing laundry by a creek and waiting for Tom to come home smelling like leather and wood smoke. He doesn't ask you to leave with him, not at first. He just hints. "You wouldn't have to work like this forever. I've got space. Could use company. Wouldn't mind someone who laughs at my bad jokes." He says it with a softness that doesn't feel like pressure, but it is. Every time he comes, he becomes harder to separate from your reality. Harder to forget when the door closes behind him. And then one night, he says it plain. "Come with me." It's not a question. Not quite a demand either. Just a possibility. Laid out between you like a card waiting to be turned over. You freeze. You don't know what to say. Your heart thuds so loud you're sure the girls downstairs can hear it. You look at his face. Serious. Hopeful. Scared. And you realise he believes it. He thinks you can just walk out. Start over. That love can wash off everything that's come before. But he doesn't understand. He doesn't know about the ledger in Lottie's office. About the debt. about the way your name isn't really your name anymore. He doesn't know that your freedom has a price tag and you're still 4 months short. He doesn't know that the town sheriff would follow you if Lottie asked. He doesn't know that even if you left, the past clings like cigarette smoke. It stains your skin and hides in your hair. You try to explain. You tell him about the money, about the rules. You expect him to balk, to retreat. But he says, I can pay it. And that's worse. Because now, the fantasy has strings. Now you're not walking away free. You're being bought again, just with a softer voice and a gentler hand. It's not love, not really. It's rescue. And rescue comes with chains, even if they're velvet. You tell him no, gently. You kiss his cheek and say thank you. You say you're not ready. You say maybe someday. He leaves with a look you can't quite read. Part sorrow, part understanding, part something heavier. After that, he doesn't come back. You sit on the porch that night, alone, watching moths bump into the lamp glass, wings thudding gently like hearts against bone. Pearl joins you, hands you a cigarette, says nothing. You both sit there for a long time. Inside, the house buzzes with laughter and music. Another performance, another night. And you? You go back to your room, you brush your hair, you light your lamp, and you keep the silver coin with the steer's head in the drawer by your bed. Not because you still believe in love, but because you remember, just once, how it almost felt real. It begins with gunfire, not the casual kind, the occasional echo of drunken bravado that comes from the saloon on payday weekends. This is different, louder, closer, the kind of sound that stops conversation mid-sentence, makes glasses freeze mid-air, and sends your pulse skittering like dice across a saloon table. You're downstairs in the parlour, helping Pearl pin a brooch into her curls, when the first shot cracks through the quiet like a whip. You both freeze, then a second, then shouting. Frankie's at the window before you can even move, peeking through the curtain. Hell's breaking loose, she mutters, voice low, steady. From the angle, all she can see is the dusty road, flashes of movement, a glint of sunlight on steel. Some idiots brought a score to town, she adds, and you already know this is going to be one of those nights. It happens every so often. A robbery gone wrong, a feud that spilled past the saloon doors, or some bounty hunter who finally caught up with the wrong man at the wrong time. There are too many guns in this town, too many hard eyes and faster hands. The tension's always there, hanging like smoke above the rooftops, and tonight it finally snapped. Miss Lottie appears from nowhere, commanding and sharp. Shutters closed, lamps low, no one in or out. She moves like a woman who's seen more than one bad night, who knows exactly how fast chaos spreads once blood hits the dirt. She locks the front door herself, slides the bolt with practiced precision, and checks each window. Stay away from the glass, she adds, and don't open that damn door for anyone unless I say so. You pull the curtains in your room, heart hammering. The rest of the girls scatter, some hiding in their rooms, some gathering in the back hallway where the walls are thickest. Lucy is crying quietly, with her knees pulled to her chest. Pearl hands her a flask. Dahlia paces. Frankie is already upstairs with her revolver, posted by the front-facing window, eyes alert, watching for anything or anyone too close. The noise outside builds, hooves pounding, men yelling. Another round of shots, closer now. You catch phrases, "Get down! He's got a hostage! I swear I'll burn it all." And you think you hear the sheriff's voice barked commands with no power behind them. Then a scream. You don't know who it is. Don't know if it's someone you know, or just another faceless body in the street. But it's sharp, raw, the kind of sound that crawls under your skin and stays there. The floor trembles once, maybe from a blast or a heavy body falling, and you huddle in the hallway with the others, candles flickering, eyes wide. For a moment everything is still, like the world is holding its breath. Then, slowly it shifts. The sounds begin to fade, hooves retreating, voices breaking apart, the last coughs of violence dissolving into desert wind. After what feels like an hour, the quiet returns. But it's not peace. It's the thick, waiting kind of quiet. You all remain where you are, unmoving, until Lottie gives the all clear. The door stays locked, but the house begins to exhale. Frankie finally relaxes her grip on the revolver. Pearl helps Lucy to her feet. You pour a drink with shaky hands. The night isn't over, but the worst might be. You don't open for business that night. Even Lottie knows better. The sheriff comes to the door eventually, hat in hand, voice low, and Lottie meets him alone. You hear her arguing with him through the wood, something about stray bullets, broken windows, promises made. She doesn't raise her voice, but each word carries weight like buckshot. She doesn't let him in. The next morning, you learn what happened. A drifter, wanted in 3 states, tried to rob the saloon with 2 others. Someone recognised him, gunfire broke out, and by the time the dust settled, 4 were dead, including a deputy and a shopkeep who stepped out to throw washwater into the alley at the wrong moment. The preacher calls for calm, the saloon closes for a day out of respect, and the brothel, quietly, becomes the safest place in town, at least for now. But the damage is done. The front parlour window is cracked, one of the porch columns has a bullet embedded in the wood, and Gerald finds a hole in the side fence, as if someone tried to climb in or out during the shootout. Lottie has it mended before noon. She doesn't speak of the night again, but you do. The girls replay it over coffee, over whiskey and the bathhouse steam. What if they'd come here? What if someone barged in? Would we have fought, you all ask, but no one really answers. Because none of you know, not for sure. Maybe you would have run. Maybe you would have screamed. Maybe Frankie would have pulled the trigger first. You realise then how thin the walls are. Not just the wood and plaster, but the illusion of control you all live inside. One night, one man, one wrong move, that's all it takes. It doesn't matter how many rules you follow or how perfect your act. Violence doesn't knock, it kicks in the door and doesn't care if you're in costume. Still, the house carries on. The next night the lamps are lit again, the curtains are drawn back, and Ruby returns to her chair by the fireplace, ready to smile. The men come as if nothing happened. They drink, they flirt, they ask if you're all right in the vaguest possible way. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to acknowledge how close death came to their favourite little playground. So you don't talk about it either. But you keep a knife a little closer, and you never sit with your back to the door again. She's just gone. It's not the first time a girl's disappeared from the house, and you know it won't be the last, but this one settles in your chest differently. Her name was Rose, or at least that's what she told you. New girl, all bright eyes and eager smiles, barely here 2 weeks before she stopped showing up for breakfast, her bed untouched, her drawer still full of clothes she hadn't had time to ruin. At first, everyone thought she was just sleeping in, maybe burned out, maybe hungover. But by the second day, the hallway started to feel colder. Miss Lottie didn't say much, just stood in the doorway of Rose's room with her arms crossed, jaw set tight. She told Lucy to pack up her things, told Pearl to burn the sheets. Nobody asked questions, because out here girls vanish for all kinds of reasons, and none of them are good. Sometimes they leave in the night, hoping to escape a debt or a man or a memory that just won't stay quiet. Sometimes a client gets too rough, and instead of justice, there's silence. Other times it's sickness, the kind that eats you from the inside out until you can't get out of bed and Lottie sends for the undertaker before your fever even breaks. And sometimes they just fold. One day they're here, painting their lips and laughing about a new pair of shoes, and the next the light in them goes out. You've seen it happen. You feel it happening to yourself some days. But with Rose, something feels off. She didn't seem scared, didn't seem sick. If anything, she was too cheerful, too grateful for everything. Said this house was like a home. And when she spoke about her future, it was with the kind of certainty only new girls have. Plans to save up, to open a shop, to find a man who didn't mind where she came from. She talked about it like it was already on the train, headed her way. Then she was gone. Pearl swears she saw her leaving late one night, coat thrown over her nightdress, a man by her side. Couldn't see his face, couldn't swear to anything. Dahlia insists she heard a struggle through the wall. Something that didn't sound like the usual, something uglier. Frankie thinks she ran, plain and simple, that maybe she got smart and made a break for it before the house could dig its claws in too deep. If she's lucky, she says, she got far enough we'll never hear her name again. But you're not sure. You go into Rose's room once after Lottie gives the okay. It's empty, but not in the usual way. There's a brush still full of auburn strands on the vanity, a half-finished letter on the desk, lipstick cap twisted off like she was interrupted mid-routine. You run your fingers over the words she left behind. Dear Annie, you wouldn't believe how kind everyone's been here. and the rest trails off. No envelope, no address, just soft handwriting and a growing silence. You ask Lottie gently what happened. She looks at you with that expression she reserves for hard truths. Girls come and go, she says. Some with a bang, some with a whisper, that's the way it is. Then she adds, almost softer, if you can't live with that, you won't last long here. And just like that, it's closed. A story with no ending. A chapter torn out of the book. You try to forget, but the room stays empty for weeks, untouched. No new girl replaces her right away. Like the house itself is waiting for an answer that won't come. Every time you pass her door, you hesitate, listen, hope, dread. And then, almost as if the house gets tired of grieving, the cycle resets. A new girl shows up. Her name is May, and she has the same wide-eyed look Rose had. Same hopeful tilt to her voice. Says she came from the east, worked in a textile mill before deciding she wanted something better. You all smile at her. Dahlia gives her one of Rose's old dresses without saying a word. Frankie tells her to avoid the third client after midnight. Pearl shows her where to hide her cash. No one mentions the girl who wore that dress last, because that's how it works. One vanishes, another appears. The bed gets fresh sheets. The ledger gets another name. The house keeps moving. But late at night, when the lamps are low and the hallway's quiet, you sometimes think you hear Rose humming. The same tune she used to sing while brushing her hair. Soft and off-key, barely audible over the creak of the floorboards. You tell yourself it's the wind, or maybe Lucy, or maybe the memory curling itself around your ribs because it refuses to let go. And you wonder, what's worse, that she's dead, or that she's still out there, somewhere, waiting for someone to notice she's missing? The girls each carry ghosts. Frankie still has a ribbon from a girl named Marie. Pearl wears a locket she swore belonged to someone who vanished into the storm. Dahlia keeps a broken hairpin in her drawer and once told you, it belonged to the one who taught me how to smile through pain. You start to understand that this life isn't just about what you endure. It's about who you remember. The girls who vanish don't really disappear. They live in whispers, in old dresses, in stories told over whiskey on a Tuesday night. And you carry Rose with you now. In the brush you kept from her vanity. In the habit you have of humming her tune without realizing it. In the extra glance you give every girl who comes through the door, wondering how long she'll last. Because in this house, the walls don't talk, but they remember, and so do you. You miss your period. It takes a few days to even notice. The schedule in the house warps your sense of time. Nights blend into mornings, sleep comes in patches, and weeks drift by like dust on the windowsill. But once you realise, the thought settles over you like a storm cloud. You try to rationalise it away. Stress, maybe. You've been drinking too much coffee, too little sleep. But deep down, in that quiet part of you that knows your body better than anyone else ever could, you're pregnant. You don't tell anyone right away. You can't. Not until you're sure. And besides, what would you say? That a man whose name you don't know left you with something more than bruises and a few extra coins? That in a house full of bodies and noise you're suddenly more alone than ever? So you keep it quiet. You keep working. You pretend your world isn't tilting. But every night, as you button up your corset tighter to hide the swelling and force a smile that cracks just a little wider, it gets harder. You've seen it happen before. Pregnancy in the brothel is a whispered horror, not because it's rare, but because it's common enough to be unremarkable. You remember Elise, whose belly showed up before she could hide it, and how Miss Lottie quietly sent her away one rainy morning with a suitcase and no goodbye. And Clara, who bled out behind the bathhouse because she waited too long, and tried too hard to fix it herself with herbs and prayers. The rest of you whispered about it for a week, then stopped. Because you had to. Because work doesn't pause for grief. So now you carry that fear inside you, both literally and figuratively. A ticking clock you can't stop. You start making excuses to skip clients, saying you're sick or cramping. You drink mint tea, like it might reset time. You run a hand over your belly when no one's looking, as if you could feel something there already. But mostly you just feel empty. Not in your body's too full of dread, but in your mind, where the what-ifs swirl like smoke in a closed room. You think about telling Lottie she's not heartless, she's a businesswoman. If she knows, maybe she'll send you to Sister May on the edge of town, the one who knows how to handle situations. Maybe there's a way out, a tonic, a procedure, a clean ending, but there's also the risk she'll see you as a liability. Just another girl who can't keep herself together. And if she cuts you loose, where would you go? What would you do with a growing belly and nowhere to sleep? So you tell Dahlia instead. One night, in the kitchen, long after the lamps are out and the others are asleep, you whisper it to her over a cup of cold coffee, hands shaking. She doesn't blink. Just lights a cigarette, blows a thin line of smoke and nods. Thought so, she says. You've been walking like you're made of glass. Then she leans forward and says, You got choices, but none of them are easy. She offers to go with you to see Sister May, says she'll keep it quiet, that no one needs to know, not even Lottie, but she also warns you, if she says it's too late, you better start thinking fast. The visit is quiet. Fast. Sister May doesn't ask how it happened, doesn't ask who, just looks you over, lays a hand on your stomach and says softly, Too far along for the strong stuff. Not safe. Her voice is kind, firm, final. You nod, even though your throat feels too tight to speak. She gives you a jar of thick, bitter tea, tells you to drink it every morning. Might not change anything, she adds, but it'll keep your strength up. She touches your cheek before you leave. No matter what they tell you, your life still matters. Back at the house, everything moves on like nothing's changed. The men still knock, the girls still laugh too loud. Pearl gets a new pair of boots and insists on showing them off. Lucy cuts her hair short, and you hide. You avoid mirrors. You speak less. You take smaller steps and pull your laces tighter. You pretend the baby doesn't exist, but in the quiet you imagine. You picture holding something soft and small, a child with your eyes or his smile or neither, a life that doesn't have to begin in a place like this. And then, just as quickly, you picture what would happen if anyone found out. You picture being cast out. You picture a tiny body buried beneath the cottonwood tree behind the house, like you heard they did with Clara's. So you plan. You start saving again, desperate and fast. You take extra clients, tell yourself it's just for now. You work when you're exhausted. You pretend the nausea isn't real. Dahlia gives you crackers and a knowing look. Frankie offers to teach you how to shoot just in case. You laugh, but take her up on it. Pearl gives you a charm she claims is for protection, some old coin with a hole punched through the centre. You hang it on a string and wear it under your dress. You start to dream differently, less about escape, more about survival. You begin to wonder if there's a town far enough away where no one knows your name, where you could find work, clean work, long enough to raise a baby who never has to see you in red lace and painted cheeks. But there's still time. A little, maybe. One night a man touches your stomach and asks if you've been eating more. You freeze, smile, say something about bread pudding, but later in your room you cry harder than you have in months, quietly. So no one hears. You wrap your arms around your body like that might hold everything in place, like you can press pause on the clock. You don't know how this ends. Maybe you'll leave before it shows. Maybe Lottie will find out and make the decision for you. Maybe the baby won't survive. Or maybe it will. Maybe you'll wake up one day in a different place, holding something that came from the hardest chapter of your life and still, somehow, feels like hope. But until then, you keep going. Because that's what women like you do. You carry the weight. You make space where there isn't any. And you survive, even when it breaks you in half. Some girls get out. Not many, and not often. But the possibility hums in the walls of the brothel like a bedtime story everyone secretly believes in. The idea that you can pack your bag, walk down the steps, and keep walking, out of town, out of the trade, into some version of life where no one calls you darling with that knowing smirk. It's a fragile hope, but it's there. The thought that maybe, just maybe, you'll be one of the rare few who escapes with her skin, her sanity, and a pocket full of money. Miss Lottie calls them the Gone Girls. She says it with a tone halfway between envy and amusement, like she's not sure whether to admire them or scoff at their nerve. Some girls think they're clever, she says one morning while tallying the books. Think they've got it all figured out, but the world doesn't care if you're clever. And yet, she doesn't stop them. Not when they've paid what's owed. Not when they walk out with the right blend of luck and timing and nothing left to lose. You think about it constantly now, more than before. It started as a vague shape in the distance, a someday idea, but now it's sharp and real. It has a season, a direction, a bag hidden under your bed with a change of clothes and a few crumpled bills. The weight of the child inside you has only made the dream more urgent. You're not trying to leave for yourself anymore. You're trying to leave for someone who hasn't even opened their eyes yet. You've seen what happens to the ones who try too soon. Girls who get desperate and run before the math adds up. Clara, who vanished in the middle of a snowstorm. Irene, who tried to hitch a ride with a travelling salesman and came back a week later. Shoeless, silent, something in her eyes completely gone. That scared you. Not just what happened to them, but how easily you could be next. But then there's Maisie. She worked the upstairs room for almost 3 years. Quiet, quick-witted, with a laugh like whiskey over honey. She never said much about her past, but she kept a small notebook tucked in her bodice, where she marked down every dollar she made. No debts, no distractions. She never drank, never got too close to the other girls, and always refused to fall in love with the clients. They're not ladders, she once told you. They don't lift you out. They climb on you and then leave you behind. One day, she just left. No goodbyes, no explanation. Just a note to Miss Lottie that read, "Thank you for the lessons. The debt is settled." You all gathered in her room after, looking for a clue. The mattress was stripped, the mirror cleaned, not a single stocking left behind. But in the drawer, beneath the false bottom, you found it. Over $200 in neat stacks. Gone. All of it. That was proof. Proof it could be done. Frankie says she made it to Colorado, opened a boarding house. Others say she married rich. Dahlia insists she runs a saloon now, serving whiskey to men who once paid to touch her. You don't know what's true. Doesn't matter. What matters is that she's gone, and she didn't come back broken. You start planning in secret. Late at night you count your money again and again, just to make sure it's real. You write down towns you've overheard in passing, places without rail lines where no one's asking questions. You ask Sister May, quietly, how far a woman could get on foot before sunrise. She gives you a side glance, then answers, farther than fear thinks, not as far as hope dreams. You start to move differently, not more carefully, just more deliberately. You take only clients who won't bruise. You don't drink. You keep to yourself, though the girls notice. Pearl raises her eyebrows. Planning a jailbreak, she jokes one night. You shrug, say nothing. She looks at you long and hard, then hands you a half-finished roll of bandages. For when the boots start to blister. You know the rules. You don't leave owing anything. You don't leave if the sheriff knows your face. You don't leave if there's someone watching you too closely. You watch the moon. You watch the streets. You listen for patterns. When Gerald makes his rounds, when the town grows quiet, when the dogs stop barking. You wait for the moment when the wind turns in your favour. There's a tension in your chest that never loosens. Because even with a plan, even with money, you know there's no guarantee. You've spent too long in this life to believe in easy endings. You might make it, halfway to the county line and be dragged back. You might get all the way to a new town only to find the past waiting there in someone else's mouth. Still, you prepare. The hardest part isn't the leaving, it's what you'll leave behind. The girls, the quiet evenings with Dahlia and her harmonica, Pearl's jokes, Lucy's smile when she finally gets a compliment she believes. Even Lottie, stern as she is, has looked after you in her own way. There's comfort in the known. Even when the known is cruel, at least it's familiar. But you can't stay. Not now. Not like this. Not with a baby coming. Not with your body changing and your dreams shifting into something with tiny fingers and a heart that beats beside your own. So you pick a night. You check the weather, the moon, the ledger. You wait until the last man leaves, until the last lamp flickers out. Then you move. Quiet. Quick. The bag under your arm, the money tucked inside your corset. You pause only once, at the foot of the stairs. You look back. The house is still. Peaceful almost. A theatre darkened after the final curtain. You whisper a name. Not yours, not Ruby. Yours. The real one. Just to remind yourself who you are before you step into the night. You don't run, you walk. Because this isn't escape, it's arrival. Some nights, when the curtains are drawn and the whiskies run dry, you feel it creeping in, slow and silent, like a cold draft under the door. You know it by the tightness behind your eyes, the heaviness in your bones. It's not sadness, not exactly. It's the quiet companion to this life, the thing that waits until everyone else is asleep before curling up beside you. Coping, surviving, numbing out, call it what you want. You've seen it in every girl who ever leaned too hard into the bottle, the pipe, or the lie that she's just fine. You didn't think it would happen to you. At first you resisted. You didn't drink more than a finger of gin after dinner, didn't touch the laudanum in Lottie's cabinet, didn't take the little wrapped paper packages Frankie kept hidden in her boot. You kept your head clear. You told yourself you had to, for survival, for the plan, for the baby. But that clarity, it cuts after a while. It leaves you too aware of everything. The way men look at you, the way the floor creaks under their weight, the way your chest tightens after a long night with no tips and no laughter. So, one night, you stop resisting. You pour yourself 2 fingers instead of 1, just a little more to dull the edges. And it works. The world softens, the ache in your lower back fades, you still feel used but not sharp about it. And after that, it gets easier. Another night, you take a drag from Pearl's cigarette and let the smoke settle in your lungs until your head floats. Another night you ask Dahlia for one of her sleeping drops, and she gives you a dropperful of something bitter and thick, says, "Just this once. Don't start relying on it." But of course you do, not every night, not yet. But enough that it becomes part of the rhythm. Paint your lips, pour the drinks, smile, lie, survive, and then retreat to your room, where the real ritual begins. A swig, a pinch, a puff, something to erase the day before sleep. You tell yourself you're in control. You're just tired. You're just easing the pressure. But it's hard to lie to yourself when you catch your reflection in the mirror at dawn, mascara smudged, lips dry, eyes not quite focused. You start keeping a tin of mints in your drawer to mask the smell of gin. You start brushing your teeth twice before breakfast, chewing parsley, spitting into the basin with a shame no one talks about. The shame you've watched in Frankie's eyes when her hand trembles too much to lace her boots. The shame that lives in the bottom of every empty bottle in the parlour. There's no one cure. Each girl chooses her own poison. Lucy, bless her, still tries to pretend she's fine with warm milk and lullabies. But you've seen her sneak little sips from Dahlia's flask. Pearl uses jokes. Always has. When things get too quiet, she starts talking fast, loud, about anything and nothing. She says she's never cried in her life. You believe her, not because she's too strong, but because she's too scared of what might happen if she ever starts. Frankie doesn't talk about what she uses, but you see the signs. The way her eyes go glassy some nights. The way she stares at the ceiling like it's whispering something only she can hear. The way she flinches when someone touches her shoulder, even if it's gentle. And Dahlia is the most honest of all. She's made peace with her coping. She drinks. She smokes. She soaks in laudanum when the weather shifts and the ache in her knees comes back. We all have ghosts, she says. I just make mine sleepy. Sometimes you wonder what life would be like if you didn't have to numb yourself. If you could sit in silence without panic, or sleep without dreams. You used to have those nights. Long ago, when you lived with people who said your name kindly. You remember what real sleep felt like. The kind that didn't come from a bottle. Now it feels foreign. A luxury. Something you traded away for a roof, a job, and enough coin to stay alive. You try to stay balanced. You do. You tell yourself, no drink before noon. No pipe unless it's been a bad night. Don't touch what you can't name. But then the baby kicks, or your ribs ache, or a client says something that sticks to you like grease, and you reach for whatever's close. You stop calling it weakness. You start calling it maintenance. Just another part of the job. Miss Lottie doesn't interfere much. She has a rule about drinking on shift, but she turns a blind eye to most things so long as you're earning and not breaking things. She keeps a bottle in her desk too, not that she ever shares. The worst nights are the ones when nothing works, when the drink doesn't dull, when the drops make your head spin but your heart still races, when you lie on the bed staring at the ceiling, nails dug into your thighs, trying not to remember every man who's ever said your name like it wasn't real. That's when the fear creeps in, not of the men, not of the house, but of yourself, of how easy it is to disappear one swallow at a time. You make a promise to the baby. You whisper it over and over, that you won't let yourself fall too far, that you'll keep your head above water, that you'll leave, soon, that this is temporary, just until you have enough, just until you're ready, just until you can breathe without burning. In the meantime, you keep your poisons small, you portion out your escapes, you find new little comforts. A letter written but never sent. A lullaby hummed into your pillow. The weight of a silver coin in your palm, rubbed smooth from all the times you've held it while dreaming of something better. Because coping isn't weakness. Not here, not now. It's the only way you survive. It's barely past dusk when the church bell rings. Just once, low and slow, a warning as much as a call. You hear it from the kitchen, halfway through a bowl of stew that tastes like sawdust and regret. Every girl in the house goes still for a beat, heads turning like you've all been slapped at the same time. No one says the word, but it lands heavy anyway. Raid. There's a certain kind of silence that comes before it. A pause in the air like the town is holding its breath. You feel it deep in your chest. Then, just as expected, comes the knock. It's not a client's knock. Too loud, too sharp, too official. Gerald opens the door before Miss Lottie even finishes lighting the front lamp, and standing there, like sin itself in a starched collar, is Deputy Kane, flanked by 2 townsmen you've never seen sober. They're smiling. That's the worst part. They always smile when they do this. "This here's a visit of moral inspection," Kane announces, as if the place doesn't know, as if you haven't lived through this half a dozen times already. As if the last inspection didn't end with Lucy crying in the pantry and Pearl paying $5 to keep her name off a list. Miss Lottie keeps her expression neutral, smooth as buttercream, but you can tell she's already calculating. "Of course, gentlemen, do come in." Her voice is sweet, but her eyes are razor sharp. She gives the signal, the flick of a wrist, and suddenly the girls are moving. Not in panic, in practiced choreography. You've all done this before. Dahlia pulls her dress up a half-inch to look more proper. Frankie tucks a small bottle behind a cushion. You sweep the cards off the parlour table and hide them in the fireplace. No gambling, no liquor in plain view, no suggestive poses or open doors. Everyone must look like a sewing circle that accidentally wandered into red velvet. Kane strolls through the parlour like he owns it. His boots scuff the rugs on purpose. He touches the edge of a lamp with the back of his finger like he's checking for dust. "Just making sure everything's legal-like," he says, knowing full well it's not. Brothels are tolerated in this town, not permitted. It's a delicate balance, a quiet arrangement between Lottie, the sheriff, and whoever sits on the town council that month. Everyone knows the house exists. They just pretend it doesn't, until it's convenient not to. The real reason for these raids is politics. Appearances. Every few months, when the preacher stirs up enough dust, or the mayor's wife gets riled about decency, the law comes knocking. Not to shut you down, but to remind you who really holds the leash. They poke around, ask stupid questions, check the ledger on Lottie's desk. One of them tries to open Pearl's drawer, and she slaps his hand away with a grin. "That's where I keep my Bible," she says. He doesn't push. But then they get to Lucy. She's sitting too still, eyes too wide, and Kane picks up on it. "You knew?" he asks, stepping a little too close. She nods, doesn't speak. "You of age?" he asks next, and the room seems to hold its breath. "Yes, sir," she says. "Turned 17 in February." You see the flicker in Kane's eyes. A little disappointment, maybe. A little danger. 17, he says slowly. "Well, close enough, I reckon." He reaches for her chin with 2 fingers, like he wants to inspect her face. Before he can touch her, Dahlia's there. "Deputy," she says smoothly, slipping between them. "Might I offer you some tea? We've got fresh from the steamer." He looks irritated, but backs off. The moment passes, but it leaves something sour in the air. Eventually they wrap it up. Nothing illegal found. No arrests. Just a fine. $30, to be paid by the end of the week, or next time there'll be real consequences. Lottie accepts the slip of paper with the kind of grace that comes from practice. "Of course," she says. "Always happy to cooperate." When they finally leave, the door shuts like the end of a bad sermon. Silence follows, thick and slow. Pearl exhales first. "Kane touches me again. I'll plant him under the porch," she mutters. Dahlia pours whiskey for everyone. Rules be damned. You drink yours fast, not because you need it, but because your hands won't stop shaking. Miss Lottie doesn't speak for a long while. She just stands by the window, watching their silhouettes disappear down the boardwalk, her expression carved from stone. Then she says, "Next time, hide the ledger better." And nobody gives their real name, ever again. The girls disperse. You find yourself back in your room, sitting on the edge of your bed, dress still rumpled from the interruption. Your mind spins with thoughts of what-ifs. What if Kane had been in a worse mood? What if Lucy had cracked? What if they decided tonight was the night they needed a spectacle? That's the game, you realise. You're always at the mercy of someone else's mood. Doesn't matter how clean the house is, how tidy the books, how many taxes Lottie pays under the table. If the law wants to ruin you, they can. All they need is a reason, or the illusion of one. The next morning, the newspaper has a blurb. Local authorities continue moral enforcement. Late-night establishment visited, fined for improper conduct. Citizens praised the action. You laugh bitterly when you read it. That's what they call it. Moral enforcement. Never mind the same men who raided you are the ones who come crawling back after sundown. But still, you keep going, because you have to. The raid doesn't end you. It just costs money and another shred of your already shredded dignity. You press your dress, reset your makeup, and prepare for the next performance. Because in this town, even the law plays pretend, and you've learned how to play back. The wind shifts the moment October hits. There's a bite in the air that creeps in through the shutters and wraps around your ankles, curling up your legs like smoke from a dying fire. The mornings turn sluggish. The wood floors go cold. Your breath fogs the window panes before you've even finished dressing. Winter is coming, and with it the brothel changes in small, strange ways. Everything slows down except the aching in your joints. It's not snowing yet, but it will be. You can smell it, clean and sharp like metal in your nose, and the closer it gets, the more the house contracts. No more open windows, no more porch lounging with a fan and a glass of lemonade. Now it's heavy quilts, dry throats, and a chill that never quite leaves your bones, no matter how high the fire burns. Customers thin out too. The cowboys ride in less. The travellers take fewer risks on bad roads. The miners get stingier, saving for whiskey and coal. And the town, once alive with music and shouts and drunken laughter, starts to grow quiet after dusk. As if everyone agrees, without speaking, that winter's no time for trouble. So the house gets quieter too. No more stomping boots at midnight. No more sudden laughter in the hallway. Just muffled voices and the sound of wood cracking in the stove. With fewer clients, you'd think the days might feel easier. They don't. The work doesn't vanish. It just stretches. Longer hours waiting. More time to sit with yourself, with your thoughts, with the ticking of the parlour clock each second slower than the last. Some of the girls thrive in the downtime. Dahlia picks up knitting. Pearl rereads the same 3 novels until the pages fall out. Frankie starts building a puzzle she'll never finish. Lucy tries to teach herself piano, pecking out little melodies on the battered upright, until Lottie threatens to throw it into the snow. You try to stay busy. Clean your room twice a day. Mend old clothes, whether they need it or not. Fold linens until your fingers go numb, but the quiet seeps into your skin. With fewer distractions, it's harder to shut out the thoughts. And there are too many of them these days. About the baby growing inside you, about the stash of money tucked in the floorboard, about the plan that still feels a lifetime away, even though it could be next week if you were desperate enough. And then there's the cold. You never realised how cruel it could be, this desert winter. Not like northern snows, soft and white and storybook. No, this cold comes with grit. It cuts. It finds you in the cracks of your body, in the corners of the room. You sleep in your clothes some nights, hat on, gloves too. The house has only 2 stoves and not enough firewood to keep everyone warm all the time, so you all take turns. The front parlour gets priority, then the kitchen. Upstairs, your room stays cold enough to see your breath until nearly noon. There's talk of splitting wood, of rationing. Gerald, Lottie's handyman, starts making daily rounds with an axe and a sour expression. You hear him muttering about damn thin pine and too many mouths. One night he hands you a few logs with a grunt and a warning. Make 'em last. Don't burn more than you need. The cold makes everything harder. Your hands crack. Your lips bleed. Getting dressed becomes a slow, painful ritual, especially when the baby starts to press harder against your ribs, as if even it is shrinking from the chill. You sit by the window some mornings, belly in your hands, whispering soft apologies into the silence. "I'll get us out," you murmur. "Soon?" But the promise tastes stale in your mouth, like a lie told too many times. The weather sharpens tempers too. Lottie's stricter. Dahlia snaps at Lucy for hogging the mirror. Frankie and Pearl go 2 whole days without speaking after one shoves the other over stew rations. Everyone's raw, exposed, thinned by the season, and the weight of too much waiting. It's like the cold strips away the glamour, the illusions, and what's left are tired women in tired rooms trying not to fall apart. And then one morning, the first snow falls. It's not much, just a dusting really, but it's enough to change the sound of the town. Everything gets quiet. The snow dampens the usual clatter. Even the brothel seems to breathe slower. You stand at your window, watching the flakes drift down onto the cracked roof of the stables, and for a moment it's beautiful. Software almost peaceful, until you remember snow means less movement, less money, more hunger. That week, Lottie cuts dinners to 1 course. No more pies, no more second helpings. She says it's temporary, but the look on her face says she's worried. You hear her arguing with Gerald in the hallway, about firewood, about meat deliveries, about what happens when the train stops. Running! It doesn't feel like a house anymore. It feels like a ship creaking on frozen water, unsure if the ice will hold. You have dreams now, thick with snow and silence. In them, you're walking through a white wasteland. No houses, no people. Just you and the baby, wrapped in a blanket, the wind pushing against you like it wants you to vanish. You wake up sweating, heart pounding, and stare at the ceiling until the sun creeps through the frost-covered glass. Sometimes you sit with the girls at night, curled near the stove like cats. No makeup, no corsets, just scarves and worn boots and cups of weak tea. You share stories you've already told a dozen times, because the sound of your own voice is better than nothing. Dahlia hums to herself. Pearl carves little shapes into the arm of the chair with a hairpin. No one tells her to stop. This is winter in the brothel. Not glamorous, not golden, just survival, hour by hour, meal by meal, dollar by dollar. You count the coins in your stash with frozen fingers. You stare at the calendar, its pages curling in the cold. You keep the bag packed under your bed, but you don't move. Not yet. The storm hasn't passed, and you're not quite ready to run barefoot through snow. They don't come back often, the girls who got out. Most vanish like smoke into the horizon. No letters, no word, no backward glances. You tell yourself that's a good sign. If they're not coming back, maybe it means they made it. Maybe they're safe, wrapped in wool somewhere, pouring coffee in a kitchen that doesn't reek of whiskey and sweat. But once in a while, every year or two, one of them does return, drifting into town like a ghost wearing new boots. It's always strange, those visits. The way they walk through the front door without knocking. The way their eyes scan the room, both familiar and foreign, like they're seeing a place that used to hold them but no longer does. And the house sees them too. The walls shift. The girls quiet down. Even Miss Lottie adjusts her posture ever so slightly, as if unsure whether to treat them like alumni or strangers. The last one who came back was Birdie. She used to run the upstairs corner room, the one with the chipped vanity mirror and the good view of the street. She left 2 years ago, no fanfare, just paid her final debt, gave Frankie a long hug, and walked into the dusk with a carpet bag and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. You all figured she was heading south. She'd always talked about San Antonio, warm weather, spicy food, and a boy who played the fiddle in some dive saloon near the river. But when she walked back in last week, she was dressed like someone who'd stopped pretending. Plain dress. No rouge. Hair pinned tight. She didn't even take off her gloves. She just looked around the room, at the velvet furniture, the decaying wallpaper, the tired eyes of girls too young to know they're tired yet, and said, "Not much has changed." Pearl laughed. "Neither have you." Birdie smiled, but not the way she used to. It was a tight smile, the kind that holds back more than it gives away. "Oh, I've changed plenty," she said. "That's why I can be here for a minute and not fall apart." She didn't stay long, just enough to sip weak tea in the parlour and catch up in clipped half-truths. She said she worked in a tailor's shop now, said she lived above it, said she doesn't miss the house, though she sometimes dreams of the soft sound of cards shuffling, or the way Dahlia used to sing old songs when she thought no one was listening. You believed her, mostly, but her eyes lingered too long on the parlour mirror. Her fingers kept fidgeting like they still wanted to smooth out lace and adjust corset hooks. Before she left, she pulled you aside, said she remembered you, said she used to watch you brushing your hair at the window, the way you stared out like you were counting every tree between you and the rest of the world. She looked at your belly, round now, undeniable, and didn't ask questions, just pressed a small coin into your hand, smooth with wear. "Buy something soft," she said, "for when the baby comes." And then she was gone. You stared at that coin for an hour before you tucked it away. Not with your escape stash, not with the brothel tips. You put it in a handkerchief with your most precious secrets. The silver steerhead token from Tom, a piece of lace from your first dress here, a dried sprig of lavender that Dahlia gave you one night when you were sobbing into your pillow. Sometimes you wonder how many of the gone girls really got out for good. Some whisper about Belle, who married a cattle baron and now wears silk every day of the week. Others talk about Janie, who bought a saloon in Montana and only hires girls who want to be there. You don't know if those stories are true or just the fairy tales you all spin in the dead hours between clients when hope is the only thing keeping you upright. But then you meet one who did get out, and you see the wear in her eyes, and you realise escape isn't freedom. Not entirely. The brothel lives in your bones long after you leave it, in the way you flinch when someone raises their voice, in the way you count coins before meals, in the way you memorise every exit in a room the moment you walk in. It's not just the house you have to leave, it's the version of yourself that survived there. And that's harder than walking out the door. Still, it gives you something. Birdie's return, brief and brittle, reminds you that it can be done, that survival isn't a myth, that the world outside the brothel doesn't just swallow girls whole and forget their names. You think about your own plan again, the way you've mapped it out in your head, the weather, the roads, the train schedules, the quiet towns 2 counties over where no one knows your face. You add Birdie's coin to the plan, like a lucky charm. Lottie doesn't comment on her visit, but you see the way she cleans the ledger that night with a little more care, as if Birdie's presence unsettled the past too much, made it too real. The house, as usual, returns to its rhythm within a day. The girls talk about Birdie for a while, wonder where she went, what she's hiding, and then they stop. There are clients to serve, rooms to clean, lips to paint. It all keeps moving. But for you, it lingers. That flicker of a future that doesn't end in a bed you didn't choose. The idea that maybe, just maybe, you'll be the next one to come back. Not because you have to, but because you can. To show the others it's possible. To remind yourself it was real. To prove that no matter how deep the velvet walls close around you, there's still a door. And sometimes, the door stays open just long enough for one girl to slip through. You don't plan for your final night on the job. You don't even realise it is your final night until it's already started, halfway through a conversation with Lucy in the dressing room. She's talking about a regular, some ranch hand with nervous hands and a generous tip jar, and you're nodding, pretending to listen while your mind floats elsewhere. Not because you don't care, but because something inside you is shifting. Quietly, firmly, like a coin finally landing after spinning forever. You feel it in your bones before you admit it out loud. You're done. The house is warm for once, heated by a stubborn fire that Frankie stoked into full flame after dinner. The pipes aren't clanging, the walls aren't creaking. Everything feels still. Not peaceful exactly, but suspended, like the world's holding its breath for you. You're nearly 8 months along now, the baby pressing under your ribs like a tucked elbow, a quiet but constant reminder. You move slower, breathe heavier, but no one questions you anymore. The girls know. The clients pretend not to notice. Tonight is no different than any other, at least on the surface. The usual parade of faces, men with beer breath and rough fingertips, each one looking to be touched, to be seen, to forget. And you've been performing so long you could do it blindfolded. The voice, the smile, the gentle laugh that makes them feel like kings. You're not angry, you're not bitter, you're just done. One of your regulars comes in around 10. A banker, polite, middle-aged, always cleans his shoes before walking upstairs. Tonight he hands you a small pouch of peppermint candy. "For the baby," he says awkwardly, and you nearly cry from the kindness. You take him upstairs, go through the motions, let him hold you for a while, though he never asks for much. He tells you he had a wife once, but she died. You tell him you had a future once, and he says nothing. After he leaves, you sit on the edge of your bed, palms resting on your knees, heart full of that strange, heavy quiet. The room looks the same as it always has. Faded wallpaper, worn rug, mirror smudged with powder and fingerprints. But tonight, you look at it differently. Like it's a painting you've stared at for too long, and suddenly all the lines have shifted. You move slowly. You stand, undress, and fold the costume of the night with care. Stockings, corset, earrings, the red dress with the fraying hem. You place them on the chair. You wash your face until the rouge is gone, and only your skin remains, pale and tired, but still yours. You brush your hair, listening to the steady rhythm of the wind outside, and hum Rose's old song, soft and off-key. You don't cry. Instead, you open the floorboard under your bed. The money's still there, just enough. Not plenty, but enough. You touch each bill like it might vanish, then slip them into your bag along with the locket, the silver coin from Tom, Birdie's peppermint, and that broken hairpin you never had the heart to throw away. You add a soft blanket for the baby and your cleanest dress. Nothing more. You wait until the house sleeps. One by one, the lights go out. The footsteps fade. The murmurs from the rooms hush down to silence. Even Lottie's heels stop clicking on the floorboards. Only the stove remains, crackling softly in the kitchen like a lullaby. You tiptoe down the hall, slow and steady, your boots barely whispering against the wood. You pass the girls' doors, Dahlia's soft snoring, Pearl talking in her sleep, Lucy's lullaby leaking faintly from behind the frame. You pause at each, place a hand on the wood, say goodbye without words. At the end of the hall you find Frankie by the back exit, as if she's been waiting. She doesn't say anything, just hands you a wool coat, hers, and nods once. You take it without asking how she knew. Of course she knew. Frankie always sees the end before it arrives. Go before the sun rises, she murmurs. It's easier that way. You squeeze her hand. She doesn't hug you, but she doesn't need to. The back door opens with a creak, and the cold bites your cheeks instantly. You slip through, boots crunching on frostbitten ground. The air smells like wood smoke and iron. The stars are out, sharp and clear, hanging over the town like watchful eyes. You pull your coat tighter, tighten your grip on the bag, and head down the alley, past the stables, past the general store's shuttered windows, past the chapel with its silent bell tower. No one stops you. The sheriff doesn't stir, no dogs bark. The world seems to step aside just for tonight, letting you pass like a rumour in the wind. You reach the edge of town before your breath starts to fog, and your heart races in your throat. Then you keep walking, because this is it. The end of Ruby, the end of velvet curtains and cheap perfume and secrets whispered between floorboards. Ahead of you is something unknown, uncertain, possibly harder, but it's yours. And as your boots press into the frozen ground, each step feels like shedding a skin you've been stuck in too long. You don't know where you'll sleep, or how long it'll take before the baby comes. But you know this, the worst of it is behind you. The house didn't break you. You left before it could. And in the dark, with frost on your breath and a bag full of everything you've ever loved, you smile. Not for anyone else, just for you. The road stretches ahead, wide and cold and unfamiliar. You don't know what the next town will look like. You don't know if there will be work or shelter or even a soft place to rest your head. But you do know one thing. It won't be a red-curtained room full of forced smiles and whispered lies. It won't be Gerald's creaking footsteps or Kane's smirk at the front door. It won't be the house that taught you how to survive but never how to live. That part, that version of you, is behind now. You walk until the stars fade, until the dark begins to melt into blue. Your feet are sore, your back is aching, and the baby has kicked at least 6 times, as if they know too that this night is different. You keep one hand on your belly the whole way, not out of fear anymore, but comfort. You're not just leaving for yourself, you're leaving for them, for what comes next. At some point you stop at a frozen creek. The water is shallow and slow, half covered in a sheet of ice. You crouch there for a while, the silence pressing in like snow, and just breathe. It's the first time in years you've been truly alone. Not in hiding, not waiting for a knock, not listening for footsteps, just you. You take out the bundle from your bag, lay it across your lap. The coin, the locket, the peppermint, relics from your life before now. You hold them each for a while, then tuck them back carefully. They're not weights, not anymore. They're reminders. You survived. You learned. You made it out. Somewhere out there is a quiet town with a warm stove and someone who doesn't ask too many questions. A place where you can start again, not as Ruby, not as a girl behind velvet curtains, but as someone whole. You're not naive, you know it won't be easy, but for the first time, you're not pretending anymore, you're choosing, and that's freedom.